We could call the meeting to order. Have everybody rise for the Lord's Prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. The Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Councilor Donahue.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Mayor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Armin Mercia.
Here.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Here.
Councilor Milinazzo.
Here.
Councilor Ramirez.
Here.
Councilor Broderick.
Here.
Councilor Caulfield.
Here.
9 present.
Okay. This is a continuation of a special meeting that we first began last week. I'll just read the warrant for the meeting. To the members of the City Council of the City of Lowell, you are hereby requested to meet at the City Council chamber on the 11th day of July at 6:00 p.m., the good of the city, in my judgment, requiring it for the purpose of the continuation of the process for hiring a new city manager for the City of Lowell. We have, I think, all been provided a copy of the proposed contract with the designated new city manager, Bernie Lynch. What is the wish of the council? Are there questions or comments in the contract? Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. From the get-go, I supported a contract, no matter who the manager was going to be. I also supported a salary of $145,000 with $15,000 added for medical expenses or medical insurance and a car. I didn't anticipate a 10% of the manager's current salary going towards a 401 or another annuity benefit. So I have problems with page 3, paragraph B. So if that remains in the contract, then I can't support the verbiage that's here.
Thank you. Councilor Donahue and Councilor Armin Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My recollection was that Councilor Broderick had made a motion at our last meeting asking the council approve offering a contract with a base salary plus benefits. I think the term was not to exceed $160,000. That was the term of the motion. It was my understanding, based on the discussion, and that what was being offered to Mr. Lynch was essentially the same, at least the net amount, as what he's being paid in Chelmsford. And so to that end, that's what I understood the directive from the council was to the law department to come back to the council with a contract that accomplished that, at least in principle. It was my understanding that Mr. Lynch was not going to be coming here to take a pay cut, nor that, as far as the motion that passed, that he was being offered less than he was being compensated for in Chelmsford. So, and I don't know what the wish of the body is, but I guess it would be appropriate to perhaps hear from the solicitor as to, did the solicitor have an opportunity to look at Mr. Lynch's contract in Chelmsford, and how does that stack up to what we have here tonight? What in terms of the various provisions and what the total amount of compensation is. Is this the same? Is it similar? Albeit if it's not identical. So I would just ask to hear from the solicitor, but I don't know if anybody else has anything else to.
Madam Solicitor, you have a view on that? Or?
It's essentially very similar to what presently exists in with the town of Chelmsford and Mr. Lynch. There are some differences. There are things in the Chelmsford agreement that are much more favorable to Mr. Lynch than what is presently before you. Examples of that would be that under his present contract, I believe he is entitled to somewhere between 10 10 to 12 months of severance in the event that a contract was terminated early, or that he was given late notice of a intent on the part of the Board of Selectmen to not renew the current contract. Also, notice provisions with the town of Chelmsford, as they currently exist, the town of Chelmsford is obligated to give Mr. Lynch 6 months' notice prior to expiration of the contract if he is not to be given a new contract. Under the terms of this agreement, the city is obligated to give Mr. Lynch 4 months' notice. In prior agreements with former city manager James Campbell, which was one of the contracts that I reviewed, as well as that of the superintendent of schools, Mr. Healy from Cambridge, as well as Mr. Lynch's contract in Chelmsford. The original notice, I believe, was 2 months under Mr. Campbell's contract. His severance package of Mr. Campbell's was 3 months severance pay. This contract is 4 months severance pay. So it's much closer to the contract that we've had in the past with Mr. Campbell than it is arguably with what he has currently in Chelmsford. There are also some other provisions in Chelmsford, such as some other, a disability pension plan that the town contributes to, which we're not contributing any to, and I think the amount of that is around $2,100. So it's close, but I think there are aspects of this that are far more favorable to the city than what he currently enjoys with Chelmsford. As far as the salary, I think the salary certainly is not a decrease in salary, and but I believe a slight increase. And then also, with respect to the additional payments into the retirement plan, that is exactly what he has now, which is 10% of whatever his current salary is, in addition to his salary, is being deposited in a retirement plan.
Councilor
And
Donahue.
just in follow-up, so that is what his current contract is with Chelmsford now, is a base salary plus the 10%?
Correct.
All right. I read the contract, we got it last night. The only thing I wanted to, I mean, there are various provisions, but one part that I wanted to clarify is the severance issue, and that is, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Lynch doesn't get severance regardless of when or how he leaves. Only under specific circumstances does the severance clause apply. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right.
And again, under the Chelmsford agreement, if the town of Chelmsford fails to give Mr. Lynch notice within 6 months prior to the termination of his current contract, then and they chose not to renew, he would then be entitled to basically nearly a year's worth of severance. By the same token, if the contract was terminated by the town of Chelmsford prior to the expiration of the contract, he would again be entitled to nearly 12 months of severance. Under the terms of the agreement that's before you today, he would be entitled to severance in the event that it was available for a total of 4 months of his salary. And the time period that we have to give him is, I believe, 4 months.
So he
Excuse
would
me, I think it's 90
3 months?
days.
90 days, I'm sorry.
90
Yeah.
days. All right,
Yeah.
so then
3 months.
he only gets severance
Thanks.
if we fail to give timely notice, or if we terminate his contract before the 2 years is up. That's the only time he gets severance.
That would be the only time he would be
Okay.
entitled to severance.
I just wanted to clarify that,
Yep.
because sometimes people get the notion that someone's going to get paid severance regardless, and
Yeah,
that's
it's not an
the case.
automatic provision.
Okay.
It's more of a penalty provision.
And just one last question, and in terms of, you said you reviewed the superintendent of schools contract as well, and is, again, without going through every provision, is the compensation amount similar to Mr. Lynch's, give or take a couple of $1,000s when all's said and done?
Honestly, when I looked at the superintendent's contract, it wasn't necessarily for a comparison of the
Okay.
salaries per se. I was
I-
looking at it more in terms of its provisions and more from a legal point of view as opposed to, because keeping in mind, in this particular case, the salary really wasn't an issue. The salary had
Right.
already been established by vote of the council, so it
And
really
I don't want to
wasn't-
go off on
it
a
wasn't up-
tangent on the superintendents, but...
No, but I
you
mean,
know.
it wasn't up even for consideration or for debate or negotiation. It had already been
It
established.
had already been approved by the council.
And so that's probably why I didn't
Okay.
focus there. on that.
Well, you know, I mean, I'll yield the floor. I just wanted some clarification. I certainly, in light of the intent here, I will support the contract. I will support it as we have seen it with the latest revision. I think it's fair. I think it's essentially what Mr. Lynch is getting for compensation currently from Chelmsford. I didn't expect that he was going to come here for less money. And I think it gets much closer to compensating the city manager on the same level playing field as the superintendent of schools. So I don't have any other comments, but I will support it.
Thank you. Councilor Armin Mercier.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me make it abundantly clear, everybody knows where I'm coming from. I don't support a contract, so therefore I'm not going to be supporting this contract tonight, and I most certainly am not going to take it all apart because it'd be, disingenuous of me to go through a contract that I'm not going to be supporting. But I do have a couple of questions just as clarification because I know this contract is going to be approved tonight and I'm going to have to live with it, and so I just want to have a couple of things clarified. I noticed that as we get into the front of this contract, we mentioned that the city manager is a chief executive, chief administrative, and chief peace officer. Can you define peace officer to me?
There are times where the manager is, in fact, the chief conservator of the peace for the city.
There are times when the mayor is too under emergencies.
Correct. Yeah.
Is that what that means?
Yeah, that's basically what that is referring to.
Okay,
That's exactly what that's referring to, really.
In here, you have a couple of sections where the clause shall survive termination of the contract. Could you just explain to me what that means? Like Section 3A, termination, you go on to indicate how the manager could be terminated, but then you have a sentence there that says, this clause shall survive termination of the contract. What does that actually mean?
Essentially, that's addressing, and it's more of an issue of mechanics. In the event that this contract were ever terminated, and then there's no agreement,
Right.
the idea behind this is mainly for the purposes of auditing and paying off of the severance, is to provide the auditor with a vehicle upon which he can still pay severance regardless of whether the contract itself has become void or terminated. And
Okay.
that was the intent behind that. The other section, I believe, that refers to survivorship is the indemnification provision. So if,
I understand that one. Okay.
if the manager were to leave
So
and there was an issue
okay.
okay.
Now, you gave us an updated one this evening, and I've asked you what was in it. Actually, it's under severance,
It's,
the same language, this clause shall survive termination of the contract.
that's the only
That-
change.
That's the only change.
That's the only change.
And that's what that means, the same as it does up above on A. It survives the contract, so if there's an amount due,
It actually moved it from, it was inadvertently put in the wrong section
Okay.
under Section 3.
okay. I guess the other question is that, what is the amount of accrued sick leave that other employees are allowed to get paid for when they leave? Do they get paid 40% of what their accrual is?
After the contract was drawn up, I had sent a copy of this down to Kathy Tierney
Okay.
in Human Relations and asked her to take a look at it to make sure that it's consistent with what we currently offer other employees.
So that is
and
consistent.
it's been reviewed by Human Relations, and it is consistent. It's consistent with, in particular, benefits that are provided to
Okay.
department heads of the city.
And so not to exceed the 20,000 includes the 40% accrued sick time?
That's
As well
correct.
as the 4 months severance?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm a little concerned, although, again, I'm not going to belabor it, but is Mr. Lynch going to be into the city's retirement system?
He will be. If
He will be.
presuming
And
he
by virtue
contributes.
of that, the city has to pay 7% into his system, as he does, or whatever the new number is?
Whatever.
So
the-
that when we talk about a 10% payment, 10% of his salary to a 401K, that's above and beyond the 7 or 8% that we pay for the retirement.
That's correct.
Is that right?
That's above and beyond. It's
Okay,
in
so-
addition to the, it's
so
in
we-
addition to the salary.
We pay a contribution to the 401K, and also we have to pay a contribution to the retirement system like all other employees.
Correct.
Okay. Why was that up front and not at the end of the year? I mean, August 1st, we have to put $14,500 into his 401K. And my question is, why would that be up front? Why wouldn't that be after he performed for a year? I mean, is there something special about that being paid like right away?
Again, it was based on what he currently has
Okay.
in Chelmsford. In Chelmsford, there is no, or at least that I'm aware of, and I believe Mr. Lynch is here. He could perhaps speak to this better than I. But I believe in Chelmsford, the way it worked is that this was something he was entitled to in the same way he's entitled to his salary, and it's not at all conditioned on anything.
So
we
in
just- we
Chelmsford, at
need-
the beginning of the contract year, the payment was made into this 401K, which is what we're going to be doing also.
I'm getting a yes from Mr. Lynch.
Okay. The other one is about the accumulative vacation time. How much accumulation can the regular employees accumulate? I'm looking at Section 8, that he'd be allowed to accumulate more than 2 years total vacation.
In no event.
So,
In no-
can our
that's-
employees accumulate less than 2 years?
It's exactly the
Same
same
thing.
provision for
Okay.
department heads. It's essentially, you get your 4 weeks vacation at the beginning of the
Okay.
year, and you can, if you don't use it, you could
Okay.
carry it over
Okay.
at the beginning of that next year.
Thank you very much. I just want to make it abundantly clear. I wanted these clarifications for my own edification. This has no bearing on the qualifications of Mr. Lynch or his background as he is going to becoming the new city manager. Again, I don't support the contract for a number of reasons, and I just wanted these things clarified. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. As Councilor Donahue indicated, I did make the motion on the day of the vote, and Madam Solicitor, I want to congratulate you on a job well done. I went through the contract, and I know with a short holiday week, I'm sure it was no easy task to get all this put together, and Mr. Lynch, thank you for your cooperation also. From what I've gathered and some of the questions here this evening that I also had that had already been answered, this seems to embody the intent of my motion, essentially to pay the $145,000 and $15,000 in additional benefits to be taken as determined by the city solicitor and Mr. Lynch. He chose to take it in retirement form as opposed to a bonus or an incentive or any other type of form. So I'm fine with it. It's the number that we had voted on a week and a half ago, and I think it's a good contract. Christine, and I congratulate you. I think we've got some clean termination language here that if hopefully won't be necessary, but I think it will. It keeps it clean and neat for both parties in the event that down the road we have to part ways. So again, good job and thank you. Obviously I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, my comments do not reflect the professionalism of the manager and all the wonderful things that he's done for Chelmsford. I know he'll do the same for Lowell. I personally feel that I can't support the contract either, not because of the person or whatever, I just feel that I can't. And I too have some questions. When we talk about the payment of 10% of the manager's current salary to a retirement plan, so that's over and above, it's not coming out of his salary, it's 10% on top of that. Okay, haven't established that, and haven't established the fact that we will be paying into the pension system. I'm concerned as well with the questions that Councilor Mercier said were similar questions that I had, but I'm concerned about a vehicle. I read one week where he's going to be using his own car, so I just want to be clear on that. Is he using a city car, or is he using his own vehicle? Do we know that?
Madam Solicitor,
If you turn to page 5
Right, it
of
says...
the agreement,
right.
section 13,
Yes, I see that. It says
Okay.
the city's vehicle use policy. So is he using our vehicle or his own?
he will have a full use of an automobile to be provided to him by the city. So he'll be using a city vehicle in the same way that past managers have.
So he won't be using his own vehicle?
not be using his own.
Because I was going to then ask you, what's the city's vehicle use policy? What does that mean under those terms of the city's vehicle use policy? Is there a stipend each month, or what are we doing?
The reference to the city's vehicle use policy is a
Right.
reference to our actual policy, rules and regulations that you would have to follow if you are utilizing a city vehicle. And essentially, those things are mainly things, if you were in an automobile accident, what are the procedures that you have to follow for notifying the city, what you have to do. It's more of a policy and procedure. It does not speak to reimbursement.
So there's not a money fee of $350 a month? We heard a rumor about that. That's actually not true, right?
That
I don't know
was a
where-
rumor.
I don't know where this figure came from, but
It was
that's...
in the Chelmsford contract, I believe it was, I believe Mr. Lynch was receiving $550 per month as a vehicle reimbursement.
But we're not doing a
But we are
reimbursement.
not doing that.
No,
We
we're
are
not.
providing him with a car, and there will be no reimbursement beyond that.
All right.
He's going to use the Crown Vic.
Is he
Crown
going to
Vic.
use one of the brand-new police vehicles that they just bought?
I would assume.
Well, anyway, that's okay. I just wanted to know that. So he will be getting registration, travel, and substantive expenses and things like that nature. We don't have any other things hidden in here that we don't know. This is all in black and white, what we've gotten, right? Right. Seems to be all here, but the
Yeah,
way...
again, most of the things such as leaves should follow along with what other department heads get. And what I tried to do actually was take the existing contract that we had with James Campbell and use that as a starting point, and then make modifications from there.
Did you get any previous input from the city manager in waiting to add anything to this? Was this strictly done by your investigative expertise of looking at different contracts? How did you come up with this document here?
No, the procedure that ended up taking place was that I tried to provide Mr. Lynch with, as quickly as possible, a working draft, and advised him that working draft would, even at my end, change perhaps considerably, and it did. So he got a working draft on Wednesday, which was the Wednesday after the holiday weekend, which was...
So he did not come up to City
And-
Hall and meet with you and go over this and tell you what to put into it? He did not do that, right?
Well, procedurally, he met with me at City Hall on Wednesday. He received a draft of this. Again, he was informed that even from our end, it was going to be changing. He was also advised that he would be getting an electronic draft so that he could take a look at it. He had counsel, and then from that point, I believe I had discussions with his attorney in terms of negotiating this contract, and then there were some other discussions, I believe, that took place between the mayor and Mr.
So-
Lynch, and I also consulted with the mayor.
So when the city manager in waiting saw the draft, were there any changes made after he looked at it?
No, actually, the only thing that was changed, there was no negotiations at the initial meeting. The real function of that meeting was to provide him with again, a copy of a working draft, with the understanding that presumably both sides, both the city as well as Mr. Lynch, would then have comments to it. And those comments were then addressed between myself and Mr. Lynch's attorney, and I believe that there were also some discussions that took place between the mayor and myself and then
Did
Mr.
Mr.
Lynch.
Lynch's attorney advise you to change anything in the draft?
Mr. Lynch's attorney isn't going to advise, with all due respect, he's not going to be advising, he's going to be attempting to negotiate. I can tell you that we had more than one conversation of different points of language that was requested, and if this answers your question.
Were there any changes in figures in money?
No, the money was established by the council.
No, I don't mean money that way. I mean like 10% of this, 4 months here, time frames, money items.
Yeah, there were certainly negotiations that took place back and forth, and what I've tried to give you is basically the closest that, what the parties were willing to agree to, subject to ultimate approval by the council. So, again, what you have before you is essentially the best I could do. I tried to protect the city to the best of my ability in terms of these provisions. If I could just continue, though, the one thing the one sole thing that Mr. Lynch and I had discussed was just a provision that I had originally had in this draft regarding a residency clause, and it was my understanding from him that that wasn't necessarily required from the council, and so that doesn't appear for you. With that sole exception, there were absolutely no negotiations that took place really between Mr. Lynch and I, and again, they took place between his attorney, and I also periodically consulted the mayor for some direction as to where we're headed with this particular contract.
Thank you very much. There's nothing in here that says, like the ordinance for our present city manager, that you get so much per year, like 5,000 in steps. Are we doing a step thing?
That was an issue. That is an issue, and
is that for a later date? That's something for a later date, or?
It's an issue that will eventually have to be addressed one way or another. The way things are right now, the ordinance that is set by the city, Mr. Lynch is at the last step of that ordinance. So that ordinance will have to be amended in some fashion at some point in time, because there is no further place to go. There was a request that we incorporate those types of issues into this document, and it was the city's position through the law department that would be impermissible, and that is a matter that again rests solely. It's a charter provision. It rests solely with the council, and that's an issue that will have to be addressed at some point by the council. So what will eventually be before you is to amend that ordinance, and if so, to what degree, and what would be the difference between the steps and how that would work. But that remains solely within your discretion, and there's absolutely nothing in this contract that does, or I would argue could, affect the salary of the city manager beyond what's set forth in the ordinance.
Thank you very much, Christine. You were very informative. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Milanazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I certainly, again, appreciate the hard work that Madam Solicitor has put into this. I do believe that the contract is a fair and equitable one, and I plan to support it. And I look forward to the ensuing 2 years. So, again, I plan to support the contract. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything further?
Right, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you have a roll call, I will work with Manager Lynch like I have with other managers. I'll support Manager Lynch while he brings the city forward. I just want to stress that Mr. Lynch will be compensated as far as medical insurance is concerned, the use of a car, $145,000 salary, and from what I can gather, the net worth per year will be $175,000 for Manager Lynch. So that's why I have a problem with the 10%. So I have no further ado, I ask for roll call.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you asked for a roll call? I mean, there are other councilors who haven't had a chance yet. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just ask Mr. Lynch a question, and it's on, or his attorney, or is that not appropriate?
I'm here.
You'll be his boss, so I
Hi,
think you
Mr.
can.
Just on the carryover, what was your thought on, vacation carryover up to 2 years? Do you typically not use the 4 weeks, which I think is reasonable for someone in your position for that length of time? What is the reason for that provision, 2 years? If you don't use it, you can carry up to 2 years.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, the answer to that is that currently I don't have any limit on my accrual. I tend to not use all my vacation time, but my understanding from the city solicitor is that the 2-year limit is what is provided to all of the department heads within the city of Lowell. So it's just incorporating the standard language from the personnel rules and regulations ordinance here in the city.
Okay, and I just had one other question, and it's really for the solicitor. And I sort of agree. I don't know what the process is, but I think there's some merit to the whole negotiation process, and having someone that will ultimately be working for the manager, certainly does raise some issues. I think all of us would like to be involved in the future, and there's just one section, and I'm sure we can probably look at it later, but I'm sure Mr. Lynch won't object. But currently, anything that has to do with the manager, there's a personnel subcommittee, including the ordinance and the performance issues. I wonder in the future if, we can look at maybe just changing the language a little bit. It does say the city. I think we can incorporate the personnel subcommittee instead of the city, because the city could mean the solicitor again, which again I'll presume that Mr. Lynch is going to stay around, and after 2 years, he's going to start the negotiation process again, and that will mean you'll be negotiating with someone that is directly working for you. So I think we need to look at that in the future, because that's either a conflict or just it doesn't set right with me.
Go ahead.
And I know there's nothing in place right now other than negotiating with 9 of us that's impossible, but I think we need to look at that. Sorry.
Sure. That was an issue I discussed with the State Ethics Commission. I filed a disclosure. The manager signed it off on determinations, and in order to do this.
Okay, that's good to know. I didn't know that, and I appreciate that. Maybe we could get that information in the future. But I'm going to support the contract. Mr. Lynch at his interview was very clear, said it was very unlikely that he would come for anything less than his contract. And I suppose the terms were not specific. But hearing the solicitor that this is not that Mr. Lynch has made some concessions, and the city is increasing the cost from our existing agreement to what we have here, and I voted for Mr. Lynch, and there is a cost to do business, and I know a contract is new, and there might be some areas that we don't always agree on completely, but I think that's the same with any and all contracts that come before this body. We don't agree on every single one. We either vote it up, and we have many contracts that come before us. We either vote it up or vote it down, and in the future we negotiate some things out and get something in return, and I'm confident that'll happen in the future. I think it's fair, and I will support it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Just before there's a motion, I would just like to compliment the solicitor on her work on this contract. I know she had significant personal commitments after the holiday weekend, over this weekend, and did not let those interfere with her work. I think she's done a very good job representing the interest of the city at some personal sacrifice to other events she had scheduled in her life. So I want to personally thank her for her efforts here, and I think that should be acknowledged.
Mayor, I wanted to incorporate those comments also,
Okay.
and thank the solicitor as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Roll call.
Okay, roll call. We need a motion to have a roll call, Council.
Move to accept.
Motion to approve the contract as presented
Second.
by Councilor Donahue, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Roll call, please.
Counselor Donahue?
Yes.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Counselor Armand Mercia?
No.
Counselor Rita Mercia?
No.
Counselor Milonazo?
Yes.
Counselor Ramirez? Yes. Counselor Broderick?
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield?
No.
6 yeas, 3 nays.
6 yeas, the contract is approved. I know there are drafts here that the solicitor could circulate for signature. I believe that's all that we have before us at this special meeting, and would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
by
moved.
Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? This meeting stands adjourned, and we will resume our regularly scheduled meeting in just 2 minutes.
These are the contracts. We got them right here. We're working on them. Yeah, just 2 minutes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I could do a moment of silence, I know Bud's doing one for Frank McInerney, and I'm doing one for Tiny Brunel.
Okay. Tiny Bruce. Let's go.
Call the meeting to order. Everybody, please rise for the Lord's Prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Mayor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Armand Mercia.
Here.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Here.
Councilor Milanazzo.
Here.
Councilor Ramirez.
Here.
Councilor Broderick.
Here.
Councilor Caulfield.
Here.
Councilor Donahue.
Here.
9 present.
9 present. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm requesting a moment of silence with darkened chambers for Francis J. McInerney, a devoted and loving husband, father, grandfather, a United States Air Force veteran of the Korean War. Mr. McInerney was an avid golfer, a community activist, and a member of the Owl Diner Charities. Just a great person, and may he rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, would like to comment on Mac, as we so honorably called him. He was a neighbor of mine. Not only was he a neighbor, he was very active in politics. I had to call him often to listen to his many strategies and his ideas about parlaying this and that, and he was always right on the money. I never thought in some instances that he would be, but he was a remarkable man, always giving of himself to charitable organizations through the Owl Diner. Always was there. He was known as a wonderful cook. It's too bad they didn't just clear out the kitchen at the Owl Diner and let him do some cooking for the patrons. It probably would have tripled the business, because he was quite a man. I'd also like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chambers for Irene Tiny Brunel, a resident of Lowell, a local musician who led her own band and was honored for her charity work with musical performances. She died Monday the 3rd. For the past 25 years, she played her music at the Pulaski Club in Lowell, where she was a lifetime member. She won various awards from Community Teamwork Incorporated for volunteering her musical skills and performing many hours at area nursing homes. One of her biggest achievements was the yearly sponsoring of a benefit to raise money for St. Jude Children's Hospital. She's done that for over the past 25 years. She will be truly missed, and I'd like to have a moment of silence in darkened chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a couple of comments in addition to those offered for Mr. McInerney. Mr. McInerney is a very close friend of my in-laws, and I come to know him through them, and he always knew where he was coming from, and I respected that about him. He had the fondest love for his family, and especially for his children. He was very proud of him, so I wanted to offer my condolences as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the first matter on the agenda this evening is a presentation by Captain Smith of the Salvation Army. As you know, Captain Smith went above and beyond the call of duty, really, in organizing relief efforts for various flood victims here in the city, and I know he's got some presentations that he's asked to make for others who similarly went above and beyond the duties here. So, Captain Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Members of the City Council, thank you again for this opportunity to come and speak before you, and to thank the community of Lowell for their tremendous effort and their outpouring of love and compassion for that flood relief effort that we've had. For many people, this flood has been a tragic event, and we knew that it was necessary to help these people to get back on their feet. And so I just thank you all so much for all your great support and efforts and getting this city back on its feet. I know we could never plan or train for an event like that, and this city has really stepped up to the plate and did some awesome things. And I've heard so many great comments about what this city has done. And we always hear some kind of negative things when things happen, but we know that we can never plan for this. And when everybody stepped up, I think great things have happened for the city of Lowell. What a tremendous effort on behalf of the leadership of Lowell and for the community and the business folks of the city of Lowell. But they have risen to the occasion again. I've said this many times before during kettle season. This city is phenomenal about their compassion and love for each other and taking care of citizens of this community. And the citizens of Lowell have shown what God commands us all to do, and that's to love your neighbor as yourself and to lend a helping hand to a brother and sister in need. And with that respect, this city has raised $111,474.94 for this event. And that's phenomenal. Now, we've spent $65,673.47 thus far to help members of the community during this flood, which leaves us with a surplus of $45,797.47. Now, with that, we've purchased stoves, refrigerators, and hot water tanks, those items that are really in need when their houses were flooded. We've also bought some furniture and some humidifiers for those based on the need, and we looked at the needs. We went house to house. We've done some house-to-house visits and really made sure that what they were needed, they were taken care of. And for most people, they are very, very pleased and thankful for what they've been given so far. And we're very pleased to support this community and help them out. Now, in the future, with the surplus left over, we're looking at buying furnaces for the folks. You know, most of their cellars were flooded, and they lost their furnaces, and we were going to see how much we raised. Our initial goal was about $30,000 to $40,000. And when we hit $100,000, we kept saying, are we going to hit 75? Are we going to hit 80? And someone shouted, we're going to go over 100. And so we did. And so we're grateful for that, and we're definitely looking forward to continuing to help these people with the remaining funds that we have. But it's always a pleasure to serve this community. Always a pleasure. And my staff is appreciating the opportunity to serve this community as well. Now, at this time, with the help of some of the committee members that were on this flood relief effort, I'd like to present some plaques to those individuals or businesses that were very helpful during this time and worked diligently in the flood effort. So I'd like to ask you if you would hold your applause until the last one is given so that everybody receives that same applause in the end. Okay. And the first one's going to go to the Saints Memorial Hospital, and receiving the plaque for the Saints Memorial Hospital tonight is Eileen Burlingame, Director in Case Management, Helen Heffernan, Patient Care Services Director, and Ron Knight, Director of Security, and Ben Polisado, Advanced Life Support Services. I think I got that one right. The next one, who spent many sleepless nights, I know, is T.J. McCarthy. And one who provided some great entertainment for us on the night of our fundraiser, Jack Knox and the Continentals. Arthur Sutcliffe and the Mahoney Funeral Home. The Madison Security Group. Next one is for Samantha and David St. Hilaire. Next one is for Linda King and the DPD. Next one's for Mario's Furniture. Next one is for Ingrid and Walter Bayless. Sharon Callery. Lynn Brown Zones and the Lowell Senior Center. Zunas. Zunas. The Lowell Development Financial Corporation, LDFC. Comfort Bedding. The Lowell Fire Department. The Lowell General Hospital. UMass Lowell students. Emergency management. Let's hear from emergency. All right. I think I know this guy. Last but not least, for his great support and hard work and dedication to this city, a man that we all love, John Cox. And we gave a few awards out on the night of the fundraiser as well. So again, thank you to the City of Lowell for the leadership of Lowell. A great job, great effort for such a tragic event that happened in this community. Something negative that we made positive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Captain Smith, if you could just remain, and we want to thank you and the Salvation Army for your efforts on behalf of the flood victims here in the city, and also to make residents aware that this event is really not over for very many people. It's only now that they're starting to receive insurance money and FEMA money, and often that money is proving inadequate for them to rebuild their homes and rebuild their lives. So the need remains great, and we know you are working diligently to do the best you can to fulfill that need to the extent you can, and we want to thank you for your efforts on behalf of the city and the flood victims here in Lowell as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that's right, Mayor Martin, that although the water has receded, and except for today that it's raining again, the effort still goes out there as it is at this very moment. I was just presented with a check, and when we think about unions, unions also always step up to the plate, and this union is no different than any others, but they stepped up to the plate this evening. The President Michael Sheehan and the Vice President Dennis Ferrara, Vice President of SEIU Chapter 159, which represents the custodians, the cafeteria workers, the library aides, and the clerks of the City of Lowell, so graciously took up a collection amongst their members, and they so ever so diligently gave a check to the Lowell Flood Relief Fund in the amount of $500, and I'd like to present it to you, Captain. So keep the money coming in. They still need it. Thank you very much. And they're here.
Okay, thank you. I think we can move into the agenda this evening. The first item is approval of the minutes of the June 27th meeting. Motion to approve by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. We can move right to the public hearings. The first public hearing is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 13 thereof, entitled Motor Vehicles and Traffic. This is the quarterly ordinance, I believe, for various for traffic ordinance amendments. Is there a motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Milanazzo, seconded by Councilor Ramirez? All those in favor of waiving the full reading say aye. Any opposed? The full reading is waived. The second reading by title, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 13 thereof, entitled Motor Vehicles and Traffic. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of this ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Hearing none. Anyone wish that portion of the public hearing is closed? Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition, that portion of the public hearing is closed. It's the wish of the council. Motion to approve by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Armin Mercier. Roll call, please.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercier?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercier?
Yes.
Councilor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez? Yes. Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay, the next item is a communication from the Retirement Board, the City of Lowell, from James A. Quayle, member of the Lowell Retirement Board, to Richard Johnson, City Clerk, and the Lowell City Council. Dear councilors, at a meeting of the Lowell Retirement Board, it was voted to accept the provisions of Chapter 157 of the Acts of 2005, Section 1 and Section 2. Section 1 applies to current members of the Lowell Retirement System, while Section 2 applies to retired members of the Lowell Retirement System. The Act provides an additional yearly retirement allowance of $15 for each year of creditable service or fraction thereof, but the total amount of this yearly retirement allowance shall not exceed $300. Retirees shall be paid retroactive to the date of each such veteran's retirement. This act provides a retirement benefit to accidental retirees that is currently being paid to superannuation retirees. In addition to the acceptance by the Lowell Retirement Board, the Act requires acceptance by the Lowell City Council. Please place this item on the next City Council agenda. I'm informed by the clerk and the solicitor that this matter needs to be scheduled for a public hearing, which could be done for the next council meeting, which I believe is on July 25th. So this needs to be referred to the Law Department to prepare the proper vote, as well as to a public hearing.
So move.
So moved by Councilor Armin Mercier, seconded by Councilor Caulfield. All those in favor of referring this matter to a public hearing on July 25th, say aye. Any opposed? The matter is so referred. Any questions on that? So that matter will, I know there are some people in the Councilor Elliott.
I was just going to follow up. It's more of a procedural issue to go through the advertising process, but just for the people watching at home, it's $15 per year with a maximum of $300 for veterans. I don't know if the manager wants to expand on this anymore, but it's something that, and I know we're not supposed to, I guess I'll hold my opinion until that point, but Mr. Manager, what exactly is the dollar cost to, this is a bill that's been enacted by the legislature recently, and I don't know how many communities are doing it, but it's for our veterans.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor, through you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councilors, ladies and gentlemen. This is a provision that was passed by the legislature. Obviously needs to be adopted by cities and towns who wish to enforce it. You pointed out correctly what the parameters of the legislation would be. For the city of Lowell, for this year, it would be approximately $50,000. That money wasn't inserted into the budget in anticipation of this vote. So we have the money in the budget. It's something that seems to make a lot of sense for our some of our retirees, and we think it would be a good thing to do.
And it's for those retirees that have been in active service that are disabled.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay,
Mr. Manager.
so, sorry for those of you who are here tonight, but legal requirements require us to advertise this and have it voted at the next city council meeting. So we will put that on the agenda for the next meeting. Anything further? Okay, the next item is an ordinance codifying all position salaries to be consistent with the fiscal year FY 2007 budget, an ordinance creating new positions, deleting and abolishing some positions, and establishing salaries of said new positions, and amending the compensation of certain employees and other changes, all consistent with and included in the City of Lowell budget for fiscal year 2007, passed by the City Council on June 26, 2006. So a motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Ramirez, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The full reading is waived. Second reading by title, an ordinance creating new positions, deleting and abolishing some positions, and establishing salaries of said new positions, and amending the compensation of certain employees and other changes, all consistent with and included in the City of Lowell budget for fiscal year 2007, passed by the City Council on June 26, 2006. This matter is also to be referred to a public hearing on July 25th. So moved by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor of referring this matter to a public hearing on July 25th say aye. Any opposed? The matter is so referred to a public hearing is to be set for July 25th. The next item, an order of taking for property for the Concord River Greenway, I believe has been also delayed until the next meeting. There was a technical defect in the vote, and so that needs to be delayed. Motion to delay that item by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Milanazzo. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That matter will be delayed until the next meeting on July 25th. The next matter is a vote leasing of 15 parking spaces for the lot on Leroy Street. A vote authorizing the city manager on behalf of the City of Lowell to enter a lease agreement with Robert Sheschareg of 36 Fayette Street, Arlington, for property located at 2 Leroy Street, Lowell, for a term not to exceed 3 years. The motion to waive the full reading of this. This is a 15-page lease by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor of waiving the full reading say aye. Any opposed? The full reading is waived. Second reading by title, a vote authorizing the city manager on behalf of the City of Lowell to enter into a lease agreement with Robert Sheschareg of 36 Fayette Street, Arlington, for property located at 2 Leroy Street, Lowell, for a term not to exceed 3 years. So, Councilor Milanazzo.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to either the city manager or the solicitor, on, there's not a page number, but under 5H, where it talks about leasee's covenants, where it talks about the leasee shall not assign, mortgage, or encumber this lease. Is that standard language in our parking lease agreements? Is that something that we include in all of our lease documents? It's, there's not a page number, but it's under 5,
I believe.
5H. 5H is.
Yep.
And the reason for my question, it states in the cover letter that the lease between Mr. McMahon, I'm sorry, the lease that we had with Mr. McMahon was actually assigned to the new owner in February. And I just am curious as to how that was done, if it was done.
If there was a violation of the,
Right, if it was
of
a
our
vi-
standard
correct,
provisions. And
correct.
if so, why, yeah. I believe this was drawn up at DPD. I believe this is a standard form that they've used in the past, Attorney Talty. I am not aware that that anything new was placed in it, and so and I do know that this language does appear in other contracts that we have. Ann Barton's here. I don't know if Ann would have any further information on that.
Ms. Barton?
I believe it is standard language we've used in leases, but I think it goes on to say that that can't be assigned without the prior written consent of the lessor. So when that property was going to be sold, Mr. McMahon approached us about the ability to transfer that. It was a short period, so I think that decision was made to allow that at the time.
And that, at the time, that didn't require a council vote?
It did not, that I'm aware of.
It wouldn't require a council vote if it was one of the terms and conditions that were set forth in the original lease agreement. And in that sense, the council would have been basically delegating whatever its authority was over that lease to, say, DPD.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Donahue?
Thank you. I want to make a motion to refer this to the Finance Subcommittee. I mean, I know it's 15 spaces, but we're getting to a point where we don't know how we're paying for what we got. So I'd make that by way of a motion so that we can get a report, what the financial impact, how do we come up with this figure? What are we doing now that we still haven't funded the payment for the garage on Middlesex Street? Is this, so, I think finance should start looking at these things.
Okay. Motion to refer to the Finance Subcommittee by Councilor Donahue, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, these parking spaces will probably be utilized during the off-peak hours, during the night?
This is the first I've seen of it, Councilor. I mean, I would assume so. I don't think there's any, I mean, I really don't know, to be honest with you. This is the first I've seen of the lease or
I've been through that parking lot many times, and it's
Sorry?
either half empty or half full. It's never...
That parking lot, yeah, it's
so-
mostly empty, I think.
Councilor Rita Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do understand, and I am familiar with this parking lot near Leroy Street. This is behind all the developments, businesses on Westford Street. It's the parking lot behind, so there's a Southeast Asian market. There is a variety store. There is a big developmental building at the V section of Westford Street. To the right is Westford Street, to the left is Pine. There's a number of housing units in there, and when Mr. McMahon had refurbished and brought that back to its beauty, he did so with the understanding that these residents needed a place to park, and so the only available spot was a city-owned parking lot, which is behind those businesses across the street. If you went there at night, there's nobody there, so we're utilizing this space and the extra money to accommodate people that need to have a place to live, or otherwise, we have a choice here. We can either have an empty parking lot with tenants that are gone because there's no place for them to park, or we can have a building filled with tenants that have a place to park at night because they are allowed to lease a spot from the city, which otherwise would be vacant and vandalized and empty and trash-ridden and things like that. It seems to me that it's added a tax base to the city by allowing this building to not be empty. So, I mean, you can send it to wherever you want to send it. I do support it as it stands right now because I'd rather have something happening than nothing at all, and that's what's happening now. We're having people living there, parking there, and I don't know where you want to go with it, but it's up to you.
Okay. Councilor Milanazzo?
The leases, I understand, expired June 30th. Are they tenants at will at this point, or what? Are they just, the lease is just gone?
I mean, the lease is expired. I don't know what is, what's going on out at that site. I don't know if Ann has any further information on this one. This was something that it wasn't drawn up in the law department, it was drawn up at DPD.
It's likely that the tenants are still using the spaces because, as people have noticed, it's not overly used. And they are typically there evenings, during the work days. They aren't used as much. But it's also a condition of their ZBA permit to have some off-street parking available, and this was the only option at that time.
Okay.
Thank you. There's a Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any difficulty looking at this in finance. I think it makes sense, but through you, the Mayor, to the solicitor, can Can you please explain, or maybe you can just be part of a report to the Finance Subcommittee if it does go there, how can a lease be transferred from one person? I'm sorry, I didn't understand that, and I need some clarification. I think we have some parking issues with this and in the Couple Square area, and I think it'll have another effect on other parking issues that we're going to discuss tonight. So, can you explain exactly what happened if it's not too long?
If this answers the question, I guess the short answer is if the lease, obviously, any sort of property transaction comes under the exclusive jurisdiction of the council. The council, however, can at times delegate its authority to, when you authorize, for example, surplus property, you're delegating that authority to the manager with some specific conditions on that to go out and sell property with a base value of X amount of dollars. With respect to the question of the lease, in the terms of the lease, if the lease specified that with written permission, they could then assign the lease, and it was approved apparently by DPD, then there was no problem with it.
And did it, okay, and was it you or Council Mercy say that as a condition of a ZBA variance that a lease was attached to this? Because that makes no sense to me that we're approving housing units based on a lease with city property.
That was...
and maybe I didn't hear it correctly.
Actually, Ian Barton, I think, had just indicated that. I mean...
Maybe it was Ann, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the law department can take a look at this. This was not something really that, again, the lease agreement, this was something that was drawn up through council over at DPD. And as far as any other arrangements that were made with respect to this particular property, I'm afraid I just don't have the particulars of the history of this property regarding the ZBA.
Maybe I'm asking
We're
questions.
happy to take a look at it. And
maybe this is going to
provide
go to
the council
finance,
report.
and those are probably appropriate questions to discuss.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you,
Councilor
Mayor.
Caulfield?
Just one question through you to the manager, T.J. McCarthy. How many parking spots are there in that parking lot?
I don't know off the top of my head, Council. I'm sorry. I don't know.
100?
I don't know. Ann?
I
No?
will-
60. 60 spaces.
60?
60.
So we're using 20% of the parking lot. 20%. And the parking lot is usually 50% empty.
Councilor Ramirez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly don't have any problem with the proposal as it's with the proposal monetarily, but with all due respect to Councilor Donahue, is there a way we could have the city solicitor take a look at that agreement just to see if it's appropriate, how we could be bound into these leases as the property was sold, and have her also report to the Finance Committee? Just to have her look at the way it was written to see if it was done properly. And that way we're not bound by covenants that shouldn't be running with the land and resting on our feet. So if we could have the city solicitor look at it as well, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Motion is to refer this matter to the Finance Subcommittee and to the solicitor for report and recommendation. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter is so referred. There was a public hearing advertised tonight, but that did not make it to the agenda for, by Verizon, 40 feet of conduit in Bedford Ave. If we could have a motion to suspend the rules to entertain this previously advertised
So
public
moved.
hearing by Councilor Donahue, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercier. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The rules are suspended for the purpose of conducting this public hearing, which was previously advertised. The matter is a public hearing petition by Verizon New England to petition the City Council for petition to construct and maintain underground conduits and manholes with wires, cables to be placed therein 40 feet long in Bedford Avenue. All those wishing to speak in favor of this matter, please come forward, state your name and address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council, and again, thank you, Councilor Donahue, for bringing this to the attention of the clerk. For the record, my name is Joseph Gleason. I'm a right-of-way agent for Verizon New England, Inc. Our offices are located at 28 Diana Lane in Dracut. Mr. Mayor, the request of Verizon this evening is for permission to lay and install approximately 40 feet of conduit across Bedford Street from pole 880/3 across Bedford Street to a new condominium development. I believe it's called Grandview Condominiums. There's quite a large number of condominiums going in there, and they're going to be requiring telephone service. I would note, for the record, that I believe the petition is incorrect. I believe the petition reads 80 feet of conduit, but the plan attached to the petition does call for 40 feet. That's the correct amount. And the notice that was issued by the city is also states 40 feet. So just in case somebody is dotting the i's and crossing the t's, they'll see that we made a mistake at Verizon. But it is 40 feet across Bedford Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this matter? Anybody else wishing to speak in favor? Not, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. A motion to refer this matter to the wire inspector by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, this matter is referred to the wire inspector. Thank you. Okay, next we have subcommittee reports. Councilor Rita Mercier.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening we had a subcommittee of the Parks and Recreation Subcommittee attended by the Commissioner of Parks and Recreation and Cemeteries, Tom Belgard. On the agenda were 3 particular items. The very first was a request to honor a truly deserving and dedicated individual who has given so much to advance the progress of various parks, whether it be adding electrical poles to illuminate different parks or building weight rooms at Colley Stadium. And it was a request to have a particular dedication for Bernie Judge, and I hope to God he isn't listening this evening, but before I brought it to the subcommittee, I also brought it to the attention of Tom Belgard and the Board of Parks, and thankfully he wasn't at the Board of Parks. He's recuperating from hip replacement surgery, and so he was not there. He does not know about this, but I think if you search for 45 years and see an individual who has done more for the city and parks and the youth of our city and the children, and brought his professional expertise in electrical to city parks and utilized his knowledge to create lighting and done everything that he possibly could up until 2 weeks before surgery, I think it's only right that we pay tribute at the request of many of his old alumni. It was decided that it would be great to pay tribute to Bernie with a plaque on a stone at the entrance of Colley Stadium, thanking him for his many years of dedicated service to the youth of our city who enjoy sports as much as he does. I usually present my speech to the Board of Parks, but I had to be here on another matter, and I presented a letter to Tom Belgard, who presented it to the Board of Parks, and they supported it unanimously. We had a vote of the subcommittee with members, City Councilor Edward Bud Caulfield and City Councilor Kevin Broderick, and we unanimously supported it there. I'm bringing it back to this council this evening for a vote by the council. It's in the way of a motion that there was a motion to accept this, the endorsement and vote of the Board of Parks, and we supported it as well. I'm bringing that forward as a motion and a vote before my colleagues this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Motion to adopt the recommendation of the subcommittee by Councilor Rita Mercier, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. The second order of business was brought up by City Councilor Edward Bud Caulfield to have the city address the conditions at Father Guerrillo Park. It seems to me that at one time it was an eyesore in the city, was transformed by the Back Central Neighborhood Association to honor and make safe and beautify the neighborhood, and they named it Father Guerrillo Park. It looked spectacular. much effort went into it, and over the past year or so, it has fallen in disrepair, and if we could address that issue with the city and have you look at that, that would be great. The third item of business was a request from Mr. Tom Gary, and that it was brought forward that the residents of Fayette Street are having a problem with the Fayette Street Park. As you know, Mazer Park is right across the street. It's a very little park, but they do have a basketball court, to which people don't seem to utilize the basketball court until it gets pitch dark. Then they come over and illegal drug transactions going on. People are batting that ball around left and right, and if we had Buckles Nolan here this evening, he would be standing at the podium bouncing the ball till we get rid of it. But having said that, we had a good-sized meeting this evening with a number of people that live there at the Mazer apartment complex. I also have a petition with 42 signatures on it, indicating that they'd like to replace that park with a more resident-friendly recreation area. Currently, because of the basketball hoop, the type of people it draws are a crowd who are loud. They disturb the peace, and there's some awful things happening there that we don't even want to get into, but they thought that it would be a good idea if we could just make that park more community and residential oriented and make it into a passive park with flowers and bushes, and it is a troubled area right now. If we could transform that into a place of beauty and put a little toddler park for the children that are living in the neighborhood, so that we could have the youth getting along with our seniors. I'm not asking that we do this without any money being there. The park has a line item for $38,000 to be used there. So if we could do away with the basketball court and make it into a passive park. There was a motion that was generated by Councilor Caulfield to support the petitioners and create a passive park, and as well as adding that they'd like police patrol in that neighborhood area until we can transform that over. And so that's the gist of the motion. It was supported unanimously by the subcommittee. For the record, I have 42 signatures with a petition that are willing to have the city do that. We spoke to Tom Bellegarde, who was at the meeting, and said he'd do everything he could to actually make that happen. So this is the report of progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Donahue?
Thank you. Well, I certainly, understand the neighbors' concerns and support it. I guess my question is more, do we have any plan? I mean, we have the Shed Park residents raising money trying to put in a tot park, and they're told there's no money, and now we're told there's $38,000 for this one. And I know Mr. Bellegarde has a very difficult time trying to balance the 80-plus parks across the city and improvements and so forth, but I would appreciate a report from Mr. Bellegarde at some point as to where's the money, where are the priorities, what are we doing so that we can address needs across the city. So just by way of just a request, can we get a report from Mr. Bellegarde to the council? Because I know we're going to get calls. How come there's money for this park and there's no money for that park? And it's impossible. It's kind of like he needs to be the loaves and fishes and make more from the money. So can we just have some kind of report and overall plan so that we can answer these questions?
Okay.
Thank you. I can respond to that.
Okay, well, there's a motion, though, to request a report from the Parks Director about budgetary priorities for park renovations.
I had made a motion a while back on what kind of plan or capital plan, and I know Mr. Bellegarde gave us something, and so, but if we can get an update so that, okay. I mean, and I certainly understand what's going on, when you have crime, a crime magnet in your neighborhood, you want to do everything you can to address that, but, I don't think I think we should be able to answer the questions honestly, that it's not just if you throw in a motion, you get a park. If you don't throw in a motion, you don't get a park. Some people have to raise money, some people don't. Can we just get an idea because I know Mr. Bellegarde has worked directly with a lot of people across the city in these in terms of he'll do what he can, but I honestly don't have answers for people. Is there a master plan? So if we can find out from him.
Okay, is there a second on that motion by Councilor Milonazo? Councilor Rita Mercia.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could respond to that. I was very surprised that he told the subcommittee that he did have 38,000 already there. But he told me other things other than a subcommittee meeting, and I can't give you a report on that. And I know that the Friends of Shed Park have been diligently fundraising and killing themselves to make things happen at Shed Park. I know of plans that are going to take place, and you will be very happy. We didn't forget them. They raised $35,000, and there are some funds available, and I just can't get into it right now, but you will not be disappointed. Yeah, but you'll get some sort of a report.
Okay. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd be remiss if I didn't say a few words about Bernie Judge. In the early 80s, when we brought Pop Warner football back to the city, there were approximately 200 youngsters involved in the program. And practice started August 1st, every single year. Those youngsters had to practice under the lights. And Bernie Judge, through his efforts, his physical efforts and his expertise, from July 1st to August 1st, physically installed the poles at the practice field at College Stadium. Put the lights up on the poles and illuminated that field. And that was one of many fields that he has donated his service to, and very extraordinary. So there are many dedicated youth leaders in our city, but Bernie Judge is right up there with the best of them. And when we do have that dedication, every member of this council should be present to say thank you to a man who has made a difference. He has made a difference with the youth in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Milonazo, if you could come up, I'd like to be heard on this matter.
Mayor Martin?
Thank you. I was not at the subcommittee meeting this evening. I apologize for that, but I did attend the subcommittee. Before I became mayor, I was a member of this subcommittee. This subject matter came before the subcommittee last year when I was a member of it, and I objected at the time to removal of basketball hoops because I don't think we have enough of them in the city. And frankly, at the time, I think we raised the issue that there was the need for further enforcement. If there was a problem with the way the park was being policed, then it should be policed better. And frankly, I don't know what removing basketball hoops is going to do. If there's still a park there and enforcement doesn't take place, we're still going to have the problem. So I would request that we delay action on this matter, at least until we get the report back from Commissioner Bellegarde about where the funding lies to convert this park, because there are parks. It's not just Shed Park that's looking for additional funding. Since I've been on this council, we've had requests for the park on Commonwealth Avenue. Those residents, too, are raising money and are waiting patiently for renovations at that park. So I understand residents are frustrated, and I think we should do everything we can to help them, but I'm not convinced that simply converting this park from a basketball hoop to a passive park is going to be the answer. And I think, we have an obligation to the youth of our city as well as to our seniors, and until we understand fully where the funding is going to come from for this, I would request the council delay action on this report.
Is that in the form of a substitute motion?
I'd like a roll call if he gets a second.
Roll call on that delay.
Second.
Okay. Clerk, roll call, please. Yes, we did have a second.
Councilor Elliott?
Let's state what are we voting on? What's the question that we're voting on?
A delay?
What's the motion that we're voting on?
Asking to delay.
Motion to delay?
Correct.
Until we get a report?
Until we get a report from Commissioner Bellegarde on the budget.
Okay.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Armin Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
No.
Councilor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
No.
Councilor Caulfield.
No.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
6 yeas, 3 nays, the motion passes.
Thank you. I actually have a subcommittee report. I don't know if it would be okay with the council if I took it and gave it from here.
So move.
Thank you. The Economic Development Subcommittee met late this afternoon at 5 o'clock in the Mays Reception Room to get an update from the administration, specifically the Department of Planning and Development, regarding the Acre Urban Revitalization and Development Plan. We talked a lot about the pending projects in Phase 2. As we all recall, and we actually did receive a memo from Mr. Coggins on June 23rd, highlighting the efforts of the Acre Urban Revitalization Plan and how it's broken down in Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3, and how it's a 10-year plan, and we actually have received money from the state, and the city has been putting money up over the last few years to make the project move forward. We actually talked about the relocation efforts that are now underway. We also talked about the infrastructure improvements that need to be accomplished, specifically bidding Cushing Street roadway extension. The design is completed, and they also need to complete one acquisition that's required along Rock Street. Ann Barton, who is representing the planning department, also talked about their efforts to continue to market the project to private developers going forward. But the most important, in my opinion, the most important action that the subcommittee did take on a motion by Councilor Donahue, seconded by Councilor Armin Mercia, was to recommend to the full council that we proceed with a taking on the properties known as Parcel 3, 4, 5, and 7 as part of Phase 2 of the Acre Revitalization Plan. And if you recall, that property is known as the Susi property, and it's on Broadway Street, Mount Vernon Street, Rock Street, and Varnum Court. So that is by way of report of the subcommittee to the full council that I'd like to bring forward that we begin the process working through the administration to begin that taking. 'Cause as of right now, as it was evidenced by comments made by the councilors and others that were in attendance, Mr. Susi is basically in limbo where he presently, where his company presently is, and in an effort to try to be cooperative, and Ms. Barton indicated that it would be a friendly taking, that we should begin the process. So again, I present that as in the form of a report to the full council. Again, I don't know if anybody has any comments. Councilor Donahue?
Thank you. Obviously, I supported the motion. You know, I think it's important that we move forward with the acre plan. This is one of the larger parcels that has yet to be addressed. There are a few others, but we've been moving forward at a good clip. Ann Barton did tell us that, you know, there's sufficient monies to do this. It looks like it would be a friendly taking. And I think in just an issue of fundamental fairness to Mr. Susi, who has been placed in limbo by the city, whether intentionally or unintentionally, because his land is targeted and he can't do anything with it. And so this accomplishes the goal of the acre plan. It also lets a business person in the city hopefully remain in the city and move forward, move his business, and then the city can deal with the development of that parcel. So, you know, when this came before us some months ago, there was some objection to the plan as proposed, whereby Mr. Susi would relocate but retain the land. That is not what this proposal is. This is simply going straight forward with a taking for purposes of development that the city will sort out later. And I think it's fair for all sides, and it's a win-win for everybody involved.
Councilor Armin Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. As you recall, Mr. Susi has been working with the DPD for a long time in an effort to try to develop his property. And that failed, and therefore it kind of put him in limbo. He can't be developing that property. He spent an awful lot of money working with the DPD to talk about where he could relocate his business, architectural plans and drawings. And right now, he needs to be bought out, he needs to be made whole, and he's going to attempt to stay in Lowell. And if this takes longer than it should, he's not going to be able to, because where he wants to relocate, there are entertaining other offers. And so it's going to be, on my understanding at the subcommittee meeting, a friendly taking, which means that it'll expedite a lot quicker, and that does not target his particular area for any particular development. That's going to mean that the city's going to own it, and is going to have to put it out for development purposes, and then we'd be guided at that point as to what to do with that site. So I support wholeheartedly taking him out, having him relocated, hopefully in the city, and then moving to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you. I would entertain, Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I did attend the subcommittee meeting, and I still have a couple of questions, and I should have asked at the subcommittee, but I was busy looking at the revised, revised plan. But through you to the chair, what is the difference between, because I didn't support this the last time, what is the difference between what we're doing now and what took place the last time?
Again, it's my understanding that what we're doing now is proposing that we just take Mr. Susi's property, relocate him, provide him with the acquisition funds and the relocation dollars, but he would then not be the developer. At the last time, he was to remain on the site as a developer of, I believe, 30 or 32 housing units. At this particular point, he would not be the developer, and the property, which would then be owned by the city, would be made available to other developers.
And what is the difference in the cost between the last time and that we're still paying him? We're going to take the property. We still have to pay his relocation costs?
Correct. It's my understanding the estimated acquisition and relocation costs are about $3.4 million. And then the estimated revenue from the sale of the property would be about $1 million. So the net cost would be about $2.4 million, which again, as you know, Councilor Elliott, we have funds through the Urban Revitalization Grant from the state.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're still relocating, and I did hear some of this in the subcommittee, so I apologize for not asking the questions then. But we're still relocating him, but we don't know where, and he's not sure whether he's going to be able to stay in the agreement. I mean, I have some concerns about that, quite honestly. Not that I know Mr. Susi, I guess from the last time, but we don't even know if he's relocating to a place in Lowell because of the agreement that's in place that may and may not still be valid. Is that a correct assumption?
Again, I'm not involved, obviously, in those discussions, but he did indicate to us this evening, or late this afternoon, that he was still in discussions with the owner of the property on Western Avenue, and he seemed relatively confident that he would be successful. But again, he's not here to answer the question, but that's the impression that I was left with.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're still, we hope to get $1 million. Is that, similar to the jam plan or the garage or the bridge? Do we have updated, were there updated appraisals given on?
According to Ms. Martin,
on relocation and?
Those are all being refreshed, is the term she used, refreshed now.
So what are we voting here? We're voting tonight, and what's the difference between tonight's vote and the vote that we took in the past?
Tonight's vote is to just support the recommendation of the subcommittee, and then the administration would bring back an order of taking, if you will, to the full council.
And it will have specific numbers and what the costs are, and I have a lot of concerns and reservations, as I did the last time, because the zoning still remains the same, correct?
Correct.
So I don't know how this will change. I know the city will control it, but the zoning will still be in effect, and we'll have a little bit more control, but...
Before the city votes for the taking, we would have firm numbers as to what the taking price is and what the relocation costs are. I think we have those numbers anyways. I think Councilor Milanazzo may have referred to those.
Well, I do want to ask these questions. I'm not sure where we're going this. I mean, it seems like if we vote this tonight, then, we're accepting this, and I think there are still a lot of unanswered questions that need to be answered before we move forward with this plan. And I know the subcommittee tried to, or did answer a lot of those, but even we still don't know some of them tonight. So thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. Just in response, it's my understanding that the recommendation of the subcommittee just merely gets the ball rolling, so to speak, so that but it's got to come back to us in terms of vote and numbers and so forth, as the manager says. Just, right now, it's been sitting out there since the last vote, and nothing's happened in terms of the plan. The plan hasn't been amended to change anything, but, so it's just getting it rolling, and it will come back to us in the proper form with additional information, obviously.
Any other comments, questions? Entertain a motion to accept the subcommittee's report as presented by Councilor Ramirez, seconded by Councilor Arman-Mercia. Roll call.
Yes.
Councilor Arman-Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
8 yeas, 1 absent.
Are there any other subcommittee reports?
Okay, the next item, we have 2 requests for handicap parking spaces, one at 62 Endicott Street and one at 17 Warren Street. These matters are both to be referred to the traffic engineer. So moved by Councilor Donahue, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Those matters are so referred. We have another petition from Robert McMahon of 55 Lincoln Parkway, a request to have Clarendon Street abandoned. This matter, I believe, gets referred to the manager for report and recommendation. So moved by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That matter is referred to the manager. And we also have a petition for storage of 20,000 gallons of gas and diesel fuel at 123 Bolt Street. After this matter came to the city clerk on Friday, there were 2 additional petitions for storage of fuel. One from Maycom on Chelmsford Street, 3,300 gallons of hydrogen, and another from Drake Petroleum, 378 Gorham Street, 25,000 gallons for a self-service gas station. Entertain a motion to suspend the rules so that all 3 of these matters could be referred to a public hearing on July 25th. So moved by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor of suspending the rules to entertain all these matters and refer them to a public hearing on July 25th. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The rules are suspended. Motion to refer these matters to a public hearing on July 25th by Councilor Broderick, second by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The matters are referred to a public hearing on July 25th. We also have a request for a pole location on Chelmsford Street from National Grid. This matter also is to be referred to a public hearing on July 25th. So moved by Councilor Arman-Mercia, seconded by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Matters are referred to a public hearing on July 25th. And finally, I think we have 2 claims, one for personal injury and one for property damage. Those matters are to be referred to the Law Department. So moved by Councilor Ramirez, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Those matters are so referred to the Law Department.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Elliott.
I was wondering, there's a motion that I have filed a little bit down on the agenda. There are a number of people here, and considering how warm and humid it is in here, I was wondering if we could take it out of order and give these folks a chance to speak. And
So moved.
Okay, motion to take this matter out of order by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercia. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That request is approved. The motion is by Councilor Elliott. The City Council requests the City Manager address the complaints of residents on Jackson Street, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercia. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I filed this motion as a result of receiving concerns and complaints and emails and phone calls on a new, I don't know if it's a parking plan or if it's a way of dealing with the construction of a new parking garage. But I did receive many emails from people that are affected by it, and their primary concern was many of them came home on an evening to find a notice on their window, indicating they had a certain or a limited amount of time to go down to the parking department and get a placard. I think they're upset by the lack of time, the lack of notice, and we need to do something about it. Many indicated that they had received deeded parking spaces, so they feel like the rug was sort of pulled out from underneath them. I know that we voted in eminent domain, but I think we need to, to do something to, I think a better notification process needed to be put in place. So I understand the concerns. I felt the need to bring it forward to the council. I think it needs to be clarified what will happen in the short and the long term. Many new homeowners, condo owners, bought under the premise they had a deeded parking space. Now, I just placed myself in their position and assuming that I had to place the park, and then, receiving a notice on my window of my vehicle, and all of a sudden I don't, and I have to pay $30 a month. I don't think that was the right process to take. We did receive something in our packet this week from Mr. Coggins indicating that they've met with, many of the concerns already voiced by businesses and residents. I suggest that from the emails that all of us received that a timely notice was not received, and I think that they have a valid concern. So I know there might be some people that would like to speak that have attended here tonight. I've spoken to some of them, but I think that the city needs to take a step to work with them and find out what a reasonable plan is to address their concerns.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Donahue?
Thank you. I too got a lot of emails and calls actually having to do with not just the condo owners and what happened to their parking, but from business owners or business people in the area and their concern about the proposal that they're going to park. Let's say it's a business on the end of Middlesex Street closest to Central. Well, the proposed parking being all the way down the end of Jackson Street at Dutton, in an area that seems pretty dark, tough to get to, tough to walk to in the winter, and them being charged $30 on top of it. So can we get a further report on that? I guess number one, it's a heck of a long walk to tell people to go through in an area in the winter months when it's dark that may be less than welcoming. And two, and I think everybody understands that this is a temporary situation, 18 months, but can we maybe see if we can get a report? Maybe there's something we can do that will be more practical. I know some of the folks are saying, is there a shuttle bus? Well, I mean, that's just not something that the city can provide. And I guess they had gotten some costs for shuttle buses from that, I'll call it the remote lot down the end of Jackson, from the LRTA. And again, it's very costly for them to do it. And so, I mean, we have some practical problems. And, I don't know if it's the cost of the $30 if we make that go away. I mean, this is not an easy solution. I think what we're going to have, though, is I think a lot of people are just going to go to the Lower Locks garage, especially during the winter, a garage that's already overburdened. And so, I certainly appreciate the parking department trying to come up with a plan, and this lot may be the best available open space, but just as a practical matter, how useful will it be for people, and will they use it, and so forth. So I think there's more talk that has to happen around this particular plan, and believe me, everybody who's called me, I've made it clear, I mean, this is not going to be perfect. It's tough to take out that number of spaces and that, that open space that people have all gotten used to parking in, even since the Barney's block went down, and all of a sudden change the rules. I think the planning and development and parking are trying to do the best they can with, the street parking and how it's going to vary. But I think maybe we should continue to look at it and see if there's something else we can do.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Manager. Yep.
Thank you. I spoke with Ann today. You have the report from Matt dated July 6th. Clearly, when you take away a huge vacant lot that people are using to park, in a very densely populated area, there's going to be problems. And I'm sure the DPD did the best they could to try to prepare for this. I think maybe in retrospect, many of the residents are new residents to the area. I think probably the major focus of some of this was more business as opposed to residents, which, you know, we can all look back and say, maybe we could have done a better job here or there. Clearly, I understand where the residents are coming from. They're clearly frustrated. It's not, as you said, Council, a perfect situation, nor can it be when you take away that much space. Ann Barton did tell me today, however, that they're continuing to talk with the residents who were affected, that it seemed to me from talking with Ann that the tenure of that discussion has improved, and certainly we will continue to work with them in any way we can to make this a better situation. But it's not a great situation. We know that. We apologize for that. You know, and I know it doesn't do you any good to say, you know, in a few short 18 months, you'll have a beautiful garage there and things will be much, much better. But that's where we're at. We're trying to work through it, and we will continue to meet with any residents who want to meet with the city to see if we can make things better for them.
Thank you. Councilor Rita Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do remember some time ago we were meeting with the businesses along Middlesex Street to see if perhaps the people that work, like, let's say, in the bank, and, you know, there are many customers during the day that need to park along Middlesex Street, and they need to park right there to go into the different establishments. They need to go into the fitness center. So this was an organization where all the businesses met with DPD, namely Steve Crane, who worked out a parking mitigation plan to try to get the people that work in that corridor up to the far end of Jackson Street, in that area there, so that they would free up the parking along Middlesex Street. Having said that, you know, we do know that there's many buildings where residents live, and we don't want to be a city that says, come on down here, we want to lure you in, but then we're going to snap the rug right under your feet. We don't want to do that, and I think maybe sometimes in our haste or exuberance to get the job done, and we forget people, and maybe they were forgotten. I'm sure they probably were. I don't think we intended to do that. We like to include everybody, but they should be included in this plan. Maybe that is too far to park. We have to form another plan to make sure that people are treated fairly. I certainly don't want any of them to move away because of this. I know that 18 months is a long time. I know you'll be probably very happy after, but it's right now you're not, and I can understand that. So I'm thinking, is there a way that we can find out if there's parking spots available in the Lower Locks garage? I don't know if it's fully utilized. I don't know, but it seems to be a fairly better place for them to park. So
Well, I think Ann was quite clear today, Council, that we are open, the DPD is open to continuing to meet with all the residents affected.
Yes,
If
that'd be
that's not the
good.
case, I want to hear it. I think it is the case. I know it's the case.
Well, you don't need to tell me that. You need to tell the
That's
people
what
here
I-
that.
I mean,
So-
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Clearly, you know, we will meet with whoever we need to meet with to try
That's
to make this
right.
better.
So I'm glad they came here this evening. I know they're very hot up there in the balcony, but I think we'll work together to try to make it better for you. And sorry myself that we overlooked you. I feel awful bad about that, because that could have been me. So I feel bad, but we will work together. Thank you for coming down. Thank you for sweating along with us this evening. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. Mayor, I know that some folks would like to speak, but they haven't registered to do so, so I'd like to make a motion, if possible, just to suspend the rules and allow some, you know, a few folks
Yes,
that
so
do want to
moved.
speak. And in the meantime, I was wondering if I could just, you know, have the solicitor, how, is there an ordinance in place to charge people to park in this lot? It just seems, I don't remember any fee structure coming before us that, you know, overnight, people are going to get charged $30. I think not only were they not notified, but now they're being charged $30 to park in a location that's not close, it's poorly lit, concerns with, you know, vandalism and things like that. How could we do that? Is it is it legal? Is there an ordinance in place to do that?
Well, we need an ordinance to set the fee rates. The law department can take a look at this particular issue and prepare a report for the council as to what the rates are and what the basis is for any charges that are being incurred out there.
I mean, so at the current, so currently there is no ordinance in place to charge people to park there.
Yes,
without-
there is. There is.
Well, the Council Mercer's saying yes, you're saying,
Well,
Excuse me, Madam Solicitor, you
Yeah, what I
finished?
was going to say is that what I was saying is that, again, you would need an ordinance to obviously to set the rates. As to the particular ordinance for this, we can look into it and provide the council with a report as to what the basis is for the charge.
well, Mayor? Well, if that's the case, if there's no ordinance in place, these people should not be charged.
I'm not saying that
I don't
there
think
isn't
she
one.
said there isn't one. She said she's not sure, and she would look into whether there was one or not. Not to put words in your
Okay.
mouth. But Councilor Rita Mercy apparently has some knowledge
Thank
of
you.
this.
Well, the Neighborhood Traffic Subcommittee met quite many years ago, and there is something in place because the people that are paying for it live at the Bagshaw Apartments on Warren Street over there, and we're at the right side of the Lower Locks Garage is a development, is a housing unit.
but he's
Andy
talking-
St. Ange lives there, as a matter of fact. You know, and those people, there are quite a few of those people that park and pay similar money there.
Well, I appreciate that, but that doesn't answer my question for this particular lot. So I understand Council
I'm
Mercy is
talking about the lower locks.
Right,
The
lower locks, but for people that had a deeded parking spot, they're
Not
told
that
that
one.
they can't park there anymore and they're being charged.
Oh, not
I would
that
suggest that there's no legal structure in place to charge them, and I don't think that they should be.
Councilor Donahue?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that the lot in question being the one all the way down the end
Oh,
of
no,
Jackson
no.
on Dutton
They
Street,
don't
which we
pay
just
there.
acquired by way of the
That's
eminent
right.
domain. So, you know, in the $30 proposal, you know, again, I'm not criticizing the parking department. It's just, given all the, and I know I'm going to be accused of talking out of both sides of my mouth in terms of we got to get every dollar. However, given the temporary situation, the extraordinary inconvenience, if that turns out to be the only open lot, maybe we should consider either waiving the fee or, you know, in for those 18 months, because people are going to be putting up with a lot of inconvenience. And again, the people I spoke to understand that there'll be a great, you know, facility at the end. It's just, how do you get from here to there? And so maybe offering an olive branch in that sense. I don't know if it's feasible, but I think we should explore every option, that's all.
Councilor Ramirez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly agree with Councilor Donahue and Councilor Elliott. And perhaps, maybe after we hear from the folks here tonight, we can have it referred to the Neighborhood Traffic Parking Subcommittee. But from my reading of this letter, I think that Manager Coggins did an excellent job. It looks to me like it's more of a guide, not a rule. And I think that, as the last paragraph states, he's looking for everybody here tonight to chime in and give him some direction on which way to go. And maybe waiving the fee is the way to go. But I certainly would like to hear from them and then maybe have it referred to the Neighborhood Traffic and Parking Subcommittee.
Okay, there is a motion to suspend the rules to hear from some of the residents here tonight, so if there are some folks that want to be heard, I think we have seen your correspondence and we have heard you and are going to continue to work on this, but if somebody does want to speak to some of the facts here, we'd be happy to hear from you. We just require under our rules that you give your name and address, and also speakers are limited to 5 minutes in time.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, members of the council, my name's Scott Owens. I'm with Perkins and Ansel. Business address is 73 Princeton Street in North Chelmsford. My office represents the Upper Cotton House lofts at Appleton Mills Condominiums, which is a 31-unit development located at 240 Jackson Street. The unit owners in that development had, under their master deed, been assigned the rights of Mr. Lakulis as it related to the 99-year ground lease for the parking space at 351. Jackson Street that was recently taken under the order of taking. That interest in the property is evidenced at the Registry of Deed. There's a clear chain of title from the original notice of lease to the master condominium that was the Cotton House Lofts, and then to the subcondominium that was the upper Cotton House Lofts that comprises these 31 units. As part of that conveyance and the creation of that condominium, there were 38 units that were assigned to the association in the 351 Jackson Street area. I think one of the biggest concerns that those unit owners have is that they weren't given notice as parties in interest to the taking proceedings, and that the first they really received actual notice of it was the letters on their cars that the councilman referred to earlier. I have a letter here that I've prepared. I'd like to submit it. I'm not going to go through the trouble of reading it into the record, if that's okay, given the 5-minute time limit, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people that want to talk. But if I can hand that over, I got an original and several copies. It basically just sets forth what I've said here and retouches on some of the things that that the council members have already discussed. One option that I thought of that might be a possibility is a temporary stay in the enforcement of the vacating of the parking spaces. I know they received notice to leave those parking spaces. I think that notice was effective for them to be gone already, but if that could possibly be stayed for 30 days until we could get some sort of a report, some sort of a contingency plan in place, I think that would go a long way to at least easing people's short-term concerns about what they're going to do in the immediate future in terms of parking. Another request that I would make that's mentioned in my letter is that if the pro tanto distribution for the taking has not yet been dispersed, that be temporarily delayed until a full determination of the relative rights of the parties who have an interest in the 351 Jackson Street property can be determined, so that if any compensation is due the unit owners of the Upper Cotton House Loft as a result of their long-term ground lease rights in the 351 Jackson Street parking area, that those can be adequately addressed as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, fellow council members. My name is Ralph Taylor, official at the Lowell Community Public Charter School, 206 Jackson Street. As an official representative, I'm also here with our head of school. One of the largest businesses in that area is the charter school. 110 employees that are affected by this parking ban. In addition to that, there's no guarantee, even if you pay the placard fee on a monthly basis, there's still a tremendous amount of competition for those spots. So we're scattered now all over the block or several blocks, and already I've had incidents where single females walking were harassed and actually being solicited for money. We're very, very concerned, and we obviously weren't involved in the process. So our recommendation is not only to look at this from a resident's business perspective, but if you will, can you also look at it from a public school perspective? And if you compare us to other public schools in the Lowell community, by state law, we are equal to. And as a result of that dilemma, I don't think there are any other public school officials, faculty, or staff that are paying for parking. But the big issue is, and what you're addressing in front of us today, is some kind of due process to allow us to make this adjustment, and for us, all of us in the neighborhood, to kind of collaborate to coexist under this dire circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this matter? Should name and address, please.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Edgar Davis. I'm a resident at 240 Jackson Street, number 620 in Lowell, Mass. And I wanted to first start out by saying I'm a proud member, or a proud resident of the Lowell community. I got married in Lowell, and that was very important to me and my partner. I frequent all of my events in Lowell. I support Lowell. And one of the reasons I've been actually living here in Lowell for 3 years, so I'm not a new resident to Lowell. Well, fairly new, though. But, you know, one of the reasons I moved down to Jackson Street is because, first of all, I believed in what the city was telling me. I read the jam plan. I read what was going on. And you know what? It was an opportunity for me to move into downtown Lowell and really embrace, first of all, a couple things that were really important to me and my partner: diversity and a community. And that's what we were really looking for. And you know, one of the things that we needed was parking. And we decided to purchase there because we had a long-term lease parking spot. And, you know, that's what kind of concerned me. And, well, what's kind of confused me is that, you know, I was under the assumption that the city approved this parking spot. And so, you know, coming 6 months, 8 months later, the parking lot's taken, and I'm told by a piece of paper on my car that I have 2 days to get a placard and pay $30 to park in a parking spot when my parking lot had been taken. And you know, that really kind of surprised me, because I figured, hey, I'm a resident of this town, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a voter, and I'm a public servant. And that time frame was just completely unacceptable to me. And I feel that my partner and I have both done everything we can to support this town and tried to become good citizens of this town. And we're very proud to live in Lowell. And I was just very hurt that this is how we were treated in the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Hello, my name is Donna Gamble, and I live at 240 Jackson Street, unit number 621. My concern here tonight, while we're very excited about the prospect of a garage, and in the time frame when we're paying $30 a month to park, I have concerns about safety. And my question to the city is, what is your plan to improve safety in this area? Currently, it's dimly lit, unsafe, and there's numerous instances of crime happening often. Personally, I've already had my car vandalized more than once, my bicycle stolen, and I have also been harassed by people on the street. I don't feel safe walking 25, 30 feet from my car to my front door. So while I'm willing to take that risk for a free parking space, I'm not willing to take that risk for a space that I am paying for. And I believe the city needs to increase police presence, some type of security improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to be heard on this matter?
My name's Michael Schubach. I'm also a resident at 240 Jackson Street. I'd just like to thank the mayor and the council for suspending the rules and letting us all give our opinion. I think it's important to note that there is two separate issues here. Our long-term lease parking and the temporary plan that the city has in place. As far as the temporary plan goes, we were given no notice by the city at all. The only notification we received was from JAMBA, which I believe is a association of businesses in the area. I personally came home from my 4th of July weekend and got out of my car, and there was a sign on the spot where I've been parking for a year that says, I'm gonna be towed. That's the only notification I got from the city. Back to the other point, the long-term lease parking spot, which the attorney already spoke about. We did hear, probably through the Lowell Sun, that the taking of the land was happening. But at that time, personally, I believe that the city had some plan in place to compensate us in some way for that loss. Certainly, a deeded leased parking spot is a part of our home's value, and if we lose that, we are all going to take a personal loss. So at that point, I believe that the city must have some plan to, in some way, address that matter. When I got out of my car and I saw that a completely different spot where I had been parking for a year was taken away from me in that matter, I began to question the city and their concern for my welfare. But again, I thank you all for letting us speak, and I do feel a lot better after coming here, and I feel confident that this matter will be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. I wasn't going to speak. My name is Carlos Aponte. I'm the headmaster of the charter public school. I'm a resident of Nashua. I'd like to clarify one point that has not been brought up here, and that is that we at the charter school have been parking all 110 of our faculty, teachers, and staff have been parking at the end parking lot and on the street since the beginning of the charter school, without any lighting at night, without any security. We've had many cars vandalized. We've had to hire security guards in the winter months to walk some of our senior teachers and some of our single female teachers to the parking lot. But we've been doing it for 6 years. What is happening now is not just an issue of money. What's happening now is that all of the parking, all of the residents, all the commercial parking customers that were parking in the lots further down the street are now coming to use the spots that we've been using. So the net effect will be for us, not just the cost. For the first time in the school, in the history of our school, as soon as school opens full-time, we now have just a summer school, just about 20 staff. But when our 110 employees come back, we're not going to have enough parking space because we're going to have to compete for the same spots we've had with everyone else. We spoke with the manager of the office that you opened right near there for the permits this morning. She told us that you've already sold over 175% of the available parking spots in terms of placards. And she was concerned that the sale was continuing. So at what point do 100 to 200 to 300% placards park in 100% of available spaces? That's going to threaten the viability of our school. We're not going to be able to have our teachers park. We're going to have empty classrooms as teachers park 2-3 blocks away. Perhaps there are schools in Lowell where staff have to pay, but they are paying for a certified spot. I know Middlesex College staff have to pay, but they have a spot. We're not paying for a spot. We're paying for a placard to compete for a spot with everyone else. I think that's important, that this is not just a business decision. It's affecting the viability of our school. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Anyone further? Okay, Councilor Broderick? Oh, I'm sorry, there's someone else. Okay.
Hi, my name's Michelle Pagni. I'm a resident of 240 Jackson Street. I'm also a first-time condo owner. I'm a single female. I grew up in Tewksbury, lived there for 26 years of my life, and was converted to come to love Lowell by one of my older brothers, who's also migrated to Lowell along with 2 of my other family members. So we've made the shift from Tewksbury to Lowell. I just want to echo something that's already been said, but security is a big factor for me. I commute into Boston every day to work as a CPA. Some of you may understand that for 6 months of my life, I don't get home until 10 o'clock at night during my busy season. As it is, walking just from the canal spots along Jackson Street to my condo is, you know, somewhat of a scary situation, but to be coming home and not being assured that I'll have a spot directly in front of the building is just not even an option for me. An option to park around at the Freudenberg plant is not an option. I'm sure you all read the Lowell Sun and you're aware of some of the activity that we've had recently down on Jackson Street. We had a drug dealer jump into the Hamilton Canal. We've had policemen actually running through our condo association looking for a gunman. So we've had some scary situations down there, and the main concern for me is really, it's just not acceptable to have to pay $30 to park in an area that's not safe, and to feel that I can't be safe at, you know, my own home and then have to pay $30 on top of that is just, it's just unsettling. So I'm hoping that the city will take this into consideration and think of that when they're coming up with a possible new plan for our parking down there. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.
My name is Eric Santucci. I live at 240 Jackson Street, 627. I, like a number of people here, moved from Boston. I, just like a number of people here tonight, moved from Boston to Lowell on the promises of Lowell recreating itself. I also have a roommate, my girlfriend, who lives with me. And as we stand right now, on the depth of Jackson Street at night, when she comes home right now, I don't feel secure in my own neighborhood at the present time. Now, with the new parking lot further down the street and across the canal, I even feel less secure for her safety as well as others that just spoke tonight. I think it's the city's responsibility to institute better lighting, better patrols with the police department, and just an action plan to secure our community's future. And this isn't, in my eyes, a short term. 18 months is a long term with 2 winters and lots of opportunity for possible aggressions towards our females and other people in the society. In addition to that, I really am concerned with how much this is costing the residents. Coming from the Boston residency, where I've lived in Charlestown, Allston, Brighton, as a resident, you do not pay for parking in the city. But we are going to be paying $360 for the year. I think that is outrageous. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone further?
Hi, my name is Abigail Elkin Paris, and I'm a resident at 240 Jackson Street, Unit 605. And I just wanted to speak again to the issue of the safety and the liability that is going to be incurred by requiring people such as myself. I'm a single female. The only reason I feel comfortable living where I do right now is the fact that I have a very large, very intimidating-looking dog. I've frequently come across, shall I say, people who are less than savory and who are rather intimidating and have certainly made me feel uncomfortable. I frequently have had experiences in our building where we have, maybe squatters isn't the right term, but people who are living or at least sleeping in our building and engaging in illicit activities. And it is, it's very scary, for lack of a better term. But the issue of the lack of lighting on the street is certainly something that is very concerning. Currently, our Master Condo Association pays for, I believe it's 3 additional floodlights right outside our building in the school. And that does makes a tremendous difference in terms of the lighting that's, at least around the immediate building. But to know that we're going to be required to park either down and across the street in the Freudenberg area, if we're lucky to get a spot there, that very much concerns me, and I would certainly welcome any further information that the city could provide with respect to plans for additional lighting on our street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Russo. I'm a resident at 240 Jackson Street. I just have a quick question about for relatives or friends or family that do come over and visit, what are they going to do about parking situations for those that do come and visit? If they stay for a long period of time, is there a plan in place, not only just the 2-hour parking limit, but people that stay overnight? Do they have anything in plan for that? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I think, we don't have answers for any of these questions tonight. I think what you do have is a commitment from this council to further look into this issue. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some of the concerns were brought up tonight, I think, are very valid, and we need to take a look at them. This, to me, sounds similar to the discussions with the bridge, and we opened it up to some public hearings and some discussion, and I think the sense I get from people here is that they want the opportunity to be heard and to have some role in the decision-making process, which I think they're entitled to. So I would support sending it to 1 or 2 subcommittees, a combination, maybe economic development and public safety or parking or a different one, because I have a couple of questions. I think, Madam Solicitor, you asked earlier about if there's something in place to be collecting funds for the parking over there. would be the first, because it sounds like we're already collecting the money. We started to, but that's something you've stated you're going to have to look into, and that's fine. The other, I think we need to come up with the best orderly transition plan we can here, and it's not going to, as the manager said, this is not going to be easy. This is not going to be, pleasant, and people I don't think are going to walk away necessarily happy, but I think we owe them the opportunity to let them speak and to deal with their issues. And I think that one of the chief is here tonight, but one of the main concerns that we seem to be hearing is a public safety issue, and perhaps he can weigh in at one of the future public hearings, or someone on his staff, because that seems to be a big issue as well. And Madam Solicitor, it was brought up by council tonight as to the condo association has apparently a 99-year lease for the parking spots. I wasn't aware of that. And I don't know if you know the answer this evening, but if you could also, in the form of a report, maybe let us know, what are they entitled to in terms of notice, or were they given any notice in the eminent domain proceedings? And they're asking about holding back the payments. And I don't know the answer, but is that something that they should initiate against Mr. Lachulis to try and tie up the money?
Right. I believe that in their lease arrangement with Mr. Lachulis, that the lease arrangement actually contemplated a taking of those parcels for eminent domain purposes, and that in the event that occurred, their remedies, I believe, were by agreement with Mr. Lachulis. It's something certainly that the appraisers had looked at. We'll try to give you more detailed information through a report on that, and as well as other issues that have been raised this evening.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense that it was in the lease, and it's something they should deal with Mr. Lachulis and not necessarily the city, because we're dealing with the landowner. But again, I would be in favor of having some public hearing set, some type of joint or a subcommittee meeting, and listen and hopefully come up with and provide them with some information and some answers as well. It sounds like everybody is kind of being hit with something that's a policy or maybe not a policy, and no one seems to know where it's coming from, or what the enforcement is, or where the authority's coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have attended meetings with Councilor Rita Mercier many times, with the business community, with the fitness center, the barber shop, Cappy's Copper Kettle, etc. And the meetings that I attended, we were more or less assured by DPD that the I's were dotted, the T's were crossed. So, Mr. Manager, first of all, if we could get a report from DPD and who authorized the placards, who authorized the letters on the windshields, etc. I apologize to these people. And I think their main concern is parking is one, but I think safety is the other. So I know the police chief is present. So, Mr. Chief, I'd like to see you assign a patrolman walking a beat on the Jackson Middlesex Street area at dusk until late into the night, so these people would be assured of their safety. Thank God this is only a short-term problem. The long-term positive outlook is a 900-space parking garage, which everyone will enjoy with the proper lighting, and everyone will get a benefit from that. But up until that time comes, I think we have to reach out and make a bad situation a little better. And first of all, we can start with addressing the safety issues for these people. Second of all, I'd like to see a report from DPD and let me know why the I wasn't dotted and the T wasn't crossed on this situation. And I apologize to you people over this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be brief. When I started getting the emails and reading them, for the time that I've been sitting here, these are exactly the types of residents we want to attract here. This is why we're building the lofts, the condos, why we're trying to market the revitalization of the city. They came here tonight expressing their concerns, and these are the types of people we want to go to Boston and their workplaces to say they came to their city government we listened to them, and we acted. I fully support the hearings and reports. I think that's part of the whole scenario that we have to put in place to let them know we're looking at the long term and the short term, but I want them to leave tonight knowing that we're taking some action too, that we're not just going to have meetings. And I move that we waive the fees to park in that location until a plan is put in place, because I think a plan should have been put in place, and they shouldn't have to pay for it until one is put in place first. And secondly, I'll support them. I think there's a motion on the floor, so this would be an amendment, Mayor, that this go to the the Neighborhood and Traffic Subcommittee. But I think it's already been mentioned. I say we waive the fees. They need some additional enforcement, police protection down there in the meantime, and lighting. I think these are things that we can work on in the meantime, because they shouldn't have to wait until a meeting is convened, and then we come up with, certain issues to address lighting, public safety, and the fees. I think that we can act on these and show them that we're responding, and responding in a timely manner. So I would make that in the way of an amendment to the motion to have a public hearing or subcommittee meeting for these people, so they know that something's going to happen now, and they don't have to wait several weeks till something does.
Second.
I second the motion.
All right, so the amended motion is to suspend the fees until such time as an amended plan is put in place.
Yes.
And then, and also to refer the matter to a hearing of the traffic subcommittee. Neighborhood and traffic subcommittee.
Yes.
So moved by Councilor Elliott, I guess seconded by almost everybody. Councilor Broderick, I think. Anyone further? Councilor Ramirez?
Yeah, I don't mind the amendment of the motion, but I think we've heard enough about public safety that I think public safety is something based on this.
All right, so there would be a joint meeting of both committees, I guess, okay. All right, anything further on this motion? All those in favor of that action, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the fees are at least temporarily suspended, and the matter is referred also to DPD for a report back to a joint meeting of the Traffic and Neighborhood Subcommittee and Public Safety Subcommittee. Councilor
Mayor,
Caulfield.
could we get a person's name, phone number, so that would be the contact person, so to let them know that we're going to have a meeting?
I do think they're represented by a counsel. We do have an attorney, so we have his name and address on the letterhead, and we'll be in touch with you when that meeting is scheduled. Okay.
We got all the emails.
Okay, I think that concludes discussion, at least for tonight, on this matter. Okay, the next motion is Councilor Donahue. The City Council requests the Public Safety Subcommittee meet with Lower Highlands neighborhood groups and representatives of the Police Department relative to recent shootings in the neighborhood, seconded by Councilor Rita Mercia. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion was prompted, actually I filed it after the Shaw Street shooting, and then after I filed it, there was another shooting on Saturday evening, I guess. And I've heard from people in the neighborhood, and it's not just one, but people who are concerned. I want to start out by saying I know out of the 8 shootings that at least I'm focusing on, there have been arrests made in, I guess, six of those. And that's outstanding police work. I'm not, the intent of the motion is not to find fault or criticize, but the intent is to, again, bring a focus of the council, the police department on this very difficult issue. And to hear from the police department here tonight what's being done, and whatever can be shared with us. And then the other point of the motion was, I think back to over 10 years ago when Councilor Mercier and I were on the Public Safety Subcommittee in neighborhood. And there were a lot of issues in the neighborhood and the neighborhood groups active around issues of crime in their neighborhoods. And we had many, many meetings with groups going out to the neighborhoods. And I think it might be time to, the subcommittee, take the initiative, again, with the administration and the police department, to have meetings in some of these neighborhoods that are affected. I think it's very difficult to say to people, we're having a subcommittee meeting, why don't you come on down to City Hall? I think it's a lot more convenient if there's a meeting right in the neighborhood or on the corner, and we can get some input. All I know is that those kind of tactics worked before, and I think we should do anything and everything we can. And also hear from the police department. Where are we? Where are we headed? Are there, we as we sit here can't go out and patrol the streets, but we have to know what are the resources, what are the tools that are necessary to fight this increase in crime. Again, it's cold comfort to someone to say, well, it's happening everywhere across the country. Well, we are arresting the people, and I appreciate that. But if you're in the neighborhood, you want to feel secure and not afraid, and know what's happening. So if there's no objection, I did want to ask if the chief could give us an update as to where we stand on the situation and what, if anything, can be done by the council.
Certainly, Councilor. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity.
Chief, no objection to hearing from the chief on this matter? Okay. Chief Davis.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate this opportunity to present on this issue, which is of great concern to us. We have 8 homicides this year. 4 of them have been shootings. 4 of them have been homicides by other means. This is a large number of homicides for us to have experienced at this point in time in the year. It's only July. Although violence is cyclical and sporadic, and I'm hoping that this is the end of the increase that we have. We are looking at many different components of a program to reduce violence in the city. You should know that in 1996, violent crime topped out at about 4,000 incidents per year. We dropped that by 1998 to 1,000 incidents, and that 1,000 incidents has stayed pretty consistent. In spite of the fact that we've had 8 homicides this year, our number of aggravated assaults has actually dropped from last year. We're down by about 40 different incidents. The difference between an aggravated assault and a homicide obviously is a death, but sometimes a death will result because of circumstances that are beyond anyone's control. So that makes increased numbers of homicides sporadic and as I said before, cyclical. We see an increase in violence and then it drops off for a period of time. And we believe that that is the case this summer. There have only been 2 gang-related homicides this year. And although 2 is unacceptable, it's a result of the work that's been done by the City Council and this city in reducing violent crime, especially in the area of gang violence. And so we've been very successful in that area. We have put in several programs to deal with the incidents that have occurred to this point. The first one is an increase in our presence in the neighborhoods. We intend to increase the number of officers who are working by applying overtime that we've received from the Shannon Gang Grant, and also to take the officers that are out there and put them in more highly visible locations. In the past, when we've had bad situations like this, officers at choke points in the city, dressed in reflective traffic vests, directing traffic, being visible, having the lights on in the cruises, making an omnipresent feeling of police presence in neighborhoods that have been identified as a particular problem goes a long way in reassuring people that someone is there and also in stopping crime from occurring. So that program is in place and will continue now for the rest of the summer. In addition to that, I've had a conversation this week with Michael Sullivan, the United States Attorney for the District of Massachusetts, and we have scheduled a meeting that is tentatively set for July 20th. United States Attorney Sullivan, along with representatives from the FBI, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the new agency, ICE, will come to the city on that date and sit down with us to examine possibilities for increased prosecutions in the federal system. One thing that's worked in the past is an approach to pull people off the street for long periods of time in federal prison who are identified as impact players out on the street. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Mr. Sullivan was more than amenable to come in and to help us with this particular issue. So we're looking forward to that. You should also know that we're working very closely with Martha Coakley, the district attorney, and her staff from the state police in solving these cases. As you've said, there are 8 incidents. 6 of them have been cleared with identified individuals. A couple of them have not been arrested yet, but people who have been identified as responsible for the case, that will ultimately be prosecuted. This last case is moving forward very, very well, and I can't speak specifically about exactly where we are in the investigation. I can tell you that we're examining a significant amount of leads, and we're very confident that we will make an arrest in this particular incident. On the prosecution side of things are progressing nicely, and we're doing the best that we can after these incidents have occurred. When you look across the country, what works in these cases is identifying the places where these incidents are occurring, and then providing a blended approach of policing to those locations, combining strict enforcement, high visibility impact patrol, along with giving kids the opportunity to be doing something different. We talked about basketball earlier in this meeting. Very, very important to keep kids off the street. Recreational programs. We've partnered with the Boys and Girls Club. We've partnered with many service providers in the city under the Shannon Grant. A significant amount of that money has gone towards prevention activities and making sure kids have other things to do when they're out there and trying to decide what they're going to do in this very hot summer. So my offices are working full-time on this issue. We sit down and meet at CompStat and talk about exactly where these incidents are occurring and where we should be deploying our offices. We'll continue to do that. What worked in 1993 when we had almost 10,000 Part 1 crimes, we're down to just over 4,000 now. So, and it's been maintaining that for the last, the low point that we had in our reported crimes was in 1999. And so what happened between 1994 and 1999 was that there was a comprehensive plan put together by this city to implement community policing, to work with the police department, the prosecutors, to get these bad guys off the street, but also to work with services like the City Inspectional Services and the License Commission to identify locations that have been problems in the past and to take preemptive action at those locations. And that's how you lower crime. It's worked for us in the past. We learned these lessons. We need to redouble our efforts to make sure that these incidents slow down and stop. Tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, we have a community meeting planned for Coben and Lakeview Avenue in the parking lot of the Dompolsky, which is right across the street from where the last homicide occurred, to meet with residents there and to talk to them about exactly what we're going to do in their neighborhood to reduce crime. In addition to that, at 7 o'clock, we reconvene at the intersection of School and Shaw Street to meet with residents there. I've talked to City Inspectional Services. They will be meeting with us at that particular location to deal with what has been identified as a flop house there, a place that has been had bedrooms rented out illegally and was the location of the homicide that occurred before the one on Coben Street. This is a very complex problem. It's being addressed in many cities across the country. It usually results from gang activity or drugs or domestic violence. One of those 3 topics is usually responsible for these issues, and we are working hard on the prevention side and on the response side to make sure that these incidents don't occur.
Thank you. Councilor Donahue?
Thank you. Well, that's certainly helpful and informative. I will say that, you know, one of the residents who I got an email from, and I know I saw a CC to the police department, expressed a feeling that the neighborhood's been forgotten, that they felt abandoned. And first of all, I don't think that's true, but I think we have to go a long way to make sure that everybody in every neighborhood knows that that's not the case, that it's being addressed, that we're looking at it, and whatever has to happen to bring us back to a situation. And I know you can't predict or control crime, but what are the things that we can do as a city to address that? And so I think, Chief, we're looking for good communication and also direction and information for us that we can share. And again, I'll repeat, if it makes sense to have, subcommittee meetings with the council, with police representatives in the neighborhoods, then just say the word, because I think people have to, first of all, know about what's going on. And not everybody watches these meetings. Not everybody reads the paper or listens to the radio. And I think with these important things, we have to take the information to the people. And I think it can be a two-way street, because they can help us with some of their information. So that's the intent of the motion. I'll yield the floor to my colleague.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, would you say that meeting was tomorrow night at 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock at Coburn and Lakeview Avenue.
Okay. I'll be there.
And then at 7 o'clock at Shaw and School Street.
Okay. I know the feelings of the people in the Lower Highlands, Chief. They've been putting up with this for years. And but I've talked to people in Centerville, and they're upset. People, Christian Hill and so forth, these criminal activities are starting to spread throughout Centerville, and they're upset about it. And I spoke to many people who you know, and they would like, Councilor Dunn, they'd like a meeting in Centerville as well. And was the police precinct open Saturday evening during that shooting?
I don't know, Councilor.
You don't know. I know, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'm an advocate of more police officers on the street, walking the beat, etc. That's the clue to this whole thing. The
Right,
presence
Councilor.
of police officers.
Right. We're down 16 officers, and that is a serious problem for us. There's no question.
I don't want to debate that with you, but I'm upset, like many members of this council.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rita Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the chief. Chief, now, I know that many people sometimes don't watch the council or read the paper, so how are we going to get these neighbors over there to know, how is they getting the word out to meet at 6 o'clock in Centerville there?
Well, that's a very good point, Councilor. What we've done is flyered the neighborhood. We have gone up into both locations, sent the community liaisons out with the police officers, and put out flyers in different languages so that people understood that we were going to do this.
All right,
However, you should know that the Belvedere Community Group has not is no longer in place, and the Highlands Group has been on the ropes looking for new leadership, and so. What was very easy to convene back in 1993 when crime was off the charts, when everybody was concerned about it, those meetings were very easy to convene. There's a sense of complacency now that needs to be pushed aside, and we really need to get the community engaged in this again to understand that there are eyes and ears out there, and it's only through working with the community that will make any difference here.
Chief, do we still have the gun buyback policy whereby people bring guns and
No, we've never done that program here, Council.
Did we ever have it? We
Not
never
here.
had it. I thought we did have it.
No.
You don't think it's a good idea to do that?
The studies that have come out of the National Institute of Justice have indicated that it's not a beneficial program. It does not lead to a reduction in crime.
Did we ever get any funding from the Senator Barrios bill for gang violence to
Yes, Councilor. We received $800,000 in June 1st, actually, that was transferred to the city. As I said, some of that money is for overtime, some of it's for police operations, but the bulk of it goes to our partners, like the Boys and Girls Club, UTEC, some of the other social service
That's
agencies.
good. And you know, I, like Councilor Caulfield, am an advocate of having police presence, walking the beat in neighborhoods. I remember years ago what worked well then when you saw Officer McGillicuddy coming down the street and you had a good rapport with this particular individual, that he was your friend. And you know that you didn't dare cross the line or he would give you a boot. And if you ever told your parents that, you know, they would be shaking Officer McGillicuddy's hand and stuff. So
It doesn't quite work like that anymore,
well,
Councilor.
well, you know what? We should bring things. I know you can't boot someone, but we should have them come back into the neighborhood and be our friend. You know the program that we had many years ago when we did have some money at the time and we got police officers to do basketball in Clemente Park
Right.
and show the kids that this guy isn't the bad guy, he's your friend. And there's a different rapport that was then.
Yeah.
We should be returning these things.
They are still doing those programs, Councilor. The Student Police Academy has just graduated a class, several hundred kids over here at the high school. The officers are working with them all summer long. We're doing programs in the neighborhoods constantly. They don't get the publicity that they get when it was a brand new program, so sometimes people don't hear about it. But we are getting the officers out of cars, they're on bicycles. We have reduced the number of officers assigned to specialty positions significantly. When we created the gang unit, we made sure that that gang unit was a totally uniformed operation. It wasn't a case of detectives running around trying to sneak up on somebody. We make sure they're in uniform all the time. They're out there in the community working in those hot spots that we've identified. So we're doing a lot of that right now, and I appreciate the opportunity to share that with you.
Yes, I want to know that. I want to hear that, but I want to see it. And I understand that the police can't be everywhere, and we're not psychics that we know that Mr. and Mrs. Smith down the street are going to have a domestic war here, and it's going to turn into violence. We can't predict that
Right.
Mr. Smith may shoot his wife. We don't know that.
Right.
But we do know that there are drug deals going on in the city, and we do know that there's violence associated with people wanting to rob that drug dealer and try to steal his money, as what we hear is happening.
Right, and that, you know, Councilor, that's an excellent example. You can't chase a drug problem away simply with uniform patrol, because when they see the uniforms coming, they stop doing what they're doing. So some of these cases require a detective to be assigned to sneak around after them and to catch up with them. And so there's always a balancing act between how many people you have assigned to plainclothes positions and how many you have assigned to the street in uniform. And I think we've balanced that off heavily towards the uniforms. But we have to have a core of officers who will do that dangerous undercover work that's necessary in complex investigations.
I know that. And one last thing that I wanted to say, and I'm very perturbed at hearing the residents saying that they don't feel safe in the Jackson Street area, and they were solicited. I thought we drove these type of people out of the city,
Absolutely
and they're being
not, Councilor.
solicited?
That particular,
I'm appalled at that.
That particular neighborhood needs 5 officers, and we
They
don't have them.
certainly do, and they're all drinking at the South Common,
Absolutely.
which happens to be a school, and
Right.
the children are walking back and forth while the Lowell Housing Authority residents are seeing these people with their bottles of wine
Right.
drinking while our school children are walking by. Unacceptable.
Right.
Not acceptable
that's
at all.
the kind of
that we
problem-
can't get the police there to disperse them and say, you're not coming back here.
Right. You know what, Councilor? There's been a problem with a liquor establishment down there that's been overselling to people who have very serious alcohol problems for decades now. And it's up to us to work with the License Commission to make sure that the license is taken away from a place like that. It's up to us to stay on top of it. But it's also important to understand that one officer assigned to that neighborhood is not going to take care of it. It requires a recognition that there's housing down there that needs to be worked on. There's a shelter, a homeless shelter that attracts people from the train who come in from various cities. This problem of Jackson, Appleton, and Middlesex Street cannot be solved by taking an officer from the Highlands or from Centerville and putting them at the end of Jackson Street. It has to be a comprehensive plan that involves all the city agencies and the police department to deal with that, with the decades-long problem of crime and prostitution and drug dealing that's occurred in that neighborhood.
Well, something has to be done.
You're right. I agree.
And I'm willing to help you if I can.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilor Ramirez, then Councilor Armin Mercia.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with Councilor Donahue's motion, and I think it would be great and I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you,
I
Council.
appreciate you bringing U.S. Attorney Sullivan to hear our concerns, because I know those folks usually come with discretionary federal funds depending on the emergencies of the communities. But you touched on something that I thought may be important, and that was the code inspectors. Would you think that the code inspectors might be good to attend these neighborhood meetings? Because my guess is that if you're going to attend a neighborhood meeting, you actually care about the neighborhood, and those folks are the ones that are going to tell you who's living where and how many, and so do you think that would be helpful?
It'd be very helpful. I had a conversation in the hallway with David St. Hilaire, who actually indicated that he would be at those meetings tomorrow. So he's been very helpful to us in the past. We also have a line item in that $800,000 grant for a building inspector to be assigned directly to the police department to work on these problems day in and day out. And we're in the process of attempting to hire someone for that position. So your thoughts are exactly on target on that, Council.
One last one. I appreciate you bringing to the attention all the issues tonight, and if working with the license commissioners is something we ought to do closer, I appreciate you telling us, because that's something we would not know. And if they need to look a little bit closer at some of these establishments that may be letting their guard down a little bit, then we need to enforce that too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Council.
Councilor Armin Mercier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First, I'm delighted to hear that there's going to be a couple of meetings where people are concerned about what just happened. But I would like to see that go further. I would like to see meetings at trouble spots that I'm sure the police department is aware of before the fact. After the fact is great. We're going to calm the people in the neighborhood. They're going to see the presence of police officers. Going to have health inspectors. I think that is terrific idea. But we got to go that one step further, though. We have to, I'm sure, Chief, with the technology you have in your office, and I've been through one of your meetings, you know where these trouble spots are, your people know where the trouble spots are, and maybe the presence at meetings at these neighborhood areas, even if there aren't organized neighborhood groups, would probably go a long way in the area of prevention. So I would urge that what you're doing is fine. If you could just go that step further and identify those spots where you think it'll do a lot of good before the fact, so that people will think twice before they do what they're doing. I think the police department is doing a tremendous job trying to handle these things. They're short-handed, and it's all right to say to put more police on the streets, but you can't put them, you don't hire them. And I would suggest that if you have money for a health inspector, don't hire anybody, draft St. Hilaire. You're going to find one great guy there for what you want to do. You and I are aware of that many, many years ago.
That's right.
But I really believe that, and I'm glad to hear that you do that balance between a uniformed police officer in a trouble spot and an officer that is not in uniform. I think one of the greatest successes you can point to, as far as I'm concerned, is your vice squad. The vice squad that travels around the city. They're not in uniform. They know where the problem is, and they're able to curb a lot of the problems that we don't have anymore because of the terrific job they're doing. So I think there's got to be some thought given to police officers, undercover, not in uniform, in those trouble spots that we know is just waiting to bubble with some sort of a problem. Again, if there's anything this council can do, just feel free to ask, because I think public safety right now is an issue that will hurt the city if we don't show the people of Lowell that we're very much concerned about that quality of life for them. And I think that's where our priority should be. Education is very, very important. Looks like there's a handle on that. I think that public safety is just as important, and I would like to put our hands around that also. So if there's anything we can do, just feel free to come to see us, because we have to put our money where our mouth is.
I agree, Councilor. Really briefly, I'd just like to respond to the first suggestion that you made. Last year, we started a project with the Kennedy School of Government to do exactly what you said, and we've had it in place now for about a year. We have identified 12 hotspots in the city where crime is occurring. That was identified by a 5-year analysis of the crime that's occurred in the city. And working with Anthony Braga from the Kennedy School, we've applied treatments to those 12 places over the last year to drive down crime. And it's been successful. The study is not complete yet, but we have teams of officers that meet once a month to talk about these hotspots and about the innovative solutions that they've put in place to deal with them. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I suppose it's something that we should continually repeat that we're in the process of doing so that you and the city understand that these applications are being put in place with just the concern that Councilor Donahue has mentioned and Councilor Mercy has mentioned, both Councilor Mercies. We need to prevent crime from occurring. That's where we're successful. If something happens, it's a failure in part. The only way to redeem that failure is to try to successfully prosecute it. But our intention is to prevent crime.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, I think you have your hands full, having been on the Public Safety Subcommittee for quite some time. I appreciate your comments tonight, and I do agree with most with comments made by my colleagues. I think that 16 being down 16 officers clearly has an impact on your police force, but I don't think 16 officers are just going to solve, and I'm not saying that you're suggesting that. I'm sure it'll help, but we heard not only the homicides we hear on Jackson Street tonight in Lower Centerville and Lower Highlands and all sections of the city. Not only do I think we need to increase the number of police officers, but I think we need to reinvigorate our current police force. And I don't know if, I'm not trying to manage the police force by any stretch, but the force that we have in place, I think we need to motivate them, and they need to know that we're behind them. And it's not just the money issue. We can put on 16 officers or 20, but there's a huge cost associated with that, and I think we need to sort of take a step back, and that's your job, to look at what we have done, where are the issues, the hot spots, and I know you have multiple issues, but we do have $800,000. I know it's not for operating costs, but maybe those resources can, and I don't want to go into the supplanting a budget, because I'm sure it's similar to with the state grant that is with the Law Enforcement Trust Fund, but there is money there, and I think the most important point is we have to get the community involved. The community, the people, they are, as I remember it 10 years ago, they are the eyes and the ears of the police officers on the streets, and that was the success that contributed to the significant reduction in crime 10, 12 years ago. But I think the people need to know that there will be a response when they do call. And with all due respect, Chief, I don't think that they have that full faith that when they are out there, they're going to get the response that they need. I don't know how you achieve that. Maybe it's additional officers. I'm sure that will help, and we need to look at that. But that's sort of my take on getting the community involved, the community policing, and I think that goes a long way. And I think people, the criminals or the perpetrators, they know that the community is aware, and they're doing their job, and they're going to let the police know when some activity takes place. And I happen to think that's one important piece of the puzzle. So,
well, Councilor, I'd have to respectfully disagree with you. These men and women are working real hard. They are really doing things that are innovative. By any measure of a conventional police department, we make the arrests, we make the cases. I've got Captain Demore over here. His officers worked around the clock for 48 hours in putting these cases, these homicide cases, together. And if you walk away just from the major high-profile cases, and you look at things like the stolen air conditioners down in the downtown section. Before that article came out in the paper this morning, I had Ricky Desilets calling every response team around to come down to look for fingerprints, to take photos, to canvass the neighborhood. A special unit went down and completely disassembled, if you will, a flop house on Page Street that we thought may be responsible for it. And I'm confident that even for a minor crime like that, that these offices are committed to making a difference in that downtown area. And so, although I understand your concern, and there are certainly things like the 111F situation, that if we were to get to a point where we could bargain things with this union and ask for concessions of the kind that they've just got in Framingham, the Framingham Police Department reduced their 111F contingent from 22 to 4 after bargaining with the union. Those are the kind of common sense things that need to be put in place. There's no question. I agree with you completely about that. But the work, day-to-day work of the men and women that are out there, I have to stand up and say they really are. They're working hard.
Well, Chief, I didn't mean to imply that they weren't working hard, but whatever we're doing, we need to do more of, and that's what I hear from people on the street and the people that call me, that, you know, they're concerned. So maybe we got to work smarter and maybe not harder, but smarter. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, are you saying that we presently don't do the interdepartmental enforcement? I thought that was being done.
I don't understand.
The health inspectors, the...
Oh, no, we do it.
Fire.
We do it. No, I'm not saying it's not happening. It's something that, from the police department's perspective, and I think from all the other services, I think we just have to redouble our efforts on it. All I'm advocating is that we go back to the lessons that we learned, and we push hard as we can, on making sure that those lessons are effective again.
I agree, and it's been said already, so I won't repeat it, but I think it's key. We're trying to broaden our tax base and economic development, whether it's residential, business, and we can't afford this type of bad news. And unfortunately, it's going to be there. People that know each other, it's tough to prevent, as you were quoted in the paper. But I think that if we refocus with this interdepartmental enforcement and start having the neighborhood meetings and make people comfortable that they can come forward and let people know where the problem spots are. You may have a geography where there's a hot spot, but they can tell you what houses, flop houses that need to be shut down, that have gangs living in them with the rooms divided and so on, that can be shut down legally without necessarily arrests, and move them out and move them on so that it's safer for the rest of the residents that have been here and that are taxpayers.
Right.
But I think it's also key for, especially over the, it's very disturbing to hear the people that live over on Jackson Street. You know, we just invest an awful lot of money over there, and I think that we really ought to refocus our efforts over there as well, because we're going to need to come up with a long-term plan for whoever's going to come in and develop this area. There's been other issues that have been brought to my attention with, you know, checks being cashed automatically at a store over there for people that get their monthly check or their bi-monthly check, and we have people that don't even live necessarily in Lowell or this area that hang out there for their checks for 2 or 3 days, and they hold the money for them. So guess where these people live? They live in the bushes over at the South Common. They live in the doorsteps of these other condominium complexes, and you know, this is a bigger problem, as you stated, and other people have, than just simply having a police officer walk up and down the street, because you can tell this person to leave, and they might for 10 minutes or 10 hours, but they're going to be back because this is where their money is, this is where their check is being held.
Right.
So I think that we definitely need to somehow target that area, because as we all know, we've spent an awful lot of money over there, and I think that that's going to be another one of the keys. But the neighborhood meetings, it's great to hear that you've initiated a couple, and I think that the key is going to be ongoing to get back, because the first meeting may only have 5 people. The next one may have 10, then 20, and I think the key is the repetition, so that people know that you're out there and we're doing what we can to prevent it, as well as catch the bad guy after. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Milanazzo.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. I certainly appreciated your presentation this evening. What's concerned me lately, or as of late, is the amount of graffiti I'm seeing in the downtown. In fact, I went by a building on Bridge Street today. It was I think it's called the Petrin Building. I think it's at like 37 Bridge Street.
Yep.
And there's a graffiti, call it, it's not a painting per se, but it's 20 feet by 20 feet. I mean, how can someone get up on I'll call it the old hot dog stand, the old hot dog building, Tony's Hot Dog or whatever it was called. What was a hot dog building right next door, the single story?
Office.
Right there. And they were up there, and they had to be up there for hours, Chief, to paint this graffiti. And they've also painted the Howe building right in the middle of Kearney Square, and they've also painted the Lowell Sun, the former press building. And again, on the Lowell Sun building, they actually got up on the top of the building, and they painted over from the roof.
Right.
And again, it's all
Chris.
covered with graffiti. So again, I just don't know how that happens if we do have a police force patrolling in the downtown.
Well, one of the things is, you'd be surprised at how fast they can do these things. It is something that happens very quickly. And it was evidenced in the New York City transit system. There was a continual problem there. Every time the trains went in at night, even though they had armed security walking through the yards, in the morning, these kids would play a cat and mouse game with them, and there'd be graffiti all over the place. What worked in the past was an immediate response by the graffiti busting machine that we have, and I know TJ's been excellent in providing that for us as soon as we recognize that there's a problem. So I didn't know that was an issue down there, but I will make sure that I'll speak with the manager's office tomorrow, make sure that we get that stuff cleaned up.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Yeah, just a brief comment. It is true we live in the world of high technology, and the police department certainly does that. My hero downtown when I was a kid was John Flaherty. He was downtown all the time, respected immensely, but there was another officer walking the beat on Middlesex Street, and there was another officer walking the beat on Bridge Street, and there's another officer walking the beat in Couple Square. Just get back to the basics of police protection. And I know, Chief, you solve a crime almost immediately, and I've heard it tonight. Prevent the crime. That's where I'm coming from. And the police officer out on the street doesn't have to be high-tech. Just walk a beat, check a door, let people know that they're out there. The people on Jackson Street need a police officer tomorrow night to protect them, getting out of their car, going to the condominium. I hope that can happen.
Counselor, I will send a police officer to Jackson Street because I heard the same pleas from this woman. But you have to understand something. The homicides haven't happened on Jackson Street. Jackson Street is a dead-end street with very few calls. If the city council and the city manager wants to have a police officer there, I will send them there. But as I said before, you're not going to solve this problem without a comprehensive, thoughtful plan that involves problem solving, that recognizes the issues that Councilor Broderick just brought up and brings to bear on these complex urban issues a real solution beyond putting a blue suit at the end of the street. And when I put that officer at the end of that street, I want you to know that that officer is coming from another neighborhood. I don't have them in reserve or on supply. So when you say that you want one in one place, I will put that officer there. But if something happens on the route that officer is working, there's nothing I can do about it. We're doing it based on statistics, we're doing it based on where the problems have been, and we're trying to do the best that we can to juggle those priorities. And it's a compelling story to hear people from Jackson Street who have bought these places and invested in our city. And I want to do everything I can to help them. But I don't want to set false expectations up for other areas of the city because one body comes from another place.
Okay, I think that's a pretty comprehensive discussion. All those in favor of the motion by Councilor Donahue, say aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Chief, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, the next matter is a joint motion, Councilor Elliott, Councilor Donahue, that the City Council request the City Manager report on the downgrade of the city's bond rating in March. Motion by both, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, I was surprised to learn from Mr. Judge about our bond rating and...
Mr. Lynch.
Excuse me. Mr. Lynch, tired again. And I would like a copy of that report, Mr. Manager, for a number of reasons. You know, bond ratings, they measure our financial strength. I don't think that there's any concern that, we're going to default on our loans, and I don't think we're moving in that direction, but it's not a positive sign. It's not a drastically negative sign, so I'm not trying to say the sky is falling, but I think that we could learn from the report as well. Can you tell me what our rating currently is? And I know it just... I don't know anything other than hearing it from the newspaper, the radio, that it has dropped, and Mr. Lynch, so...
If I may address that, Councilor, back in March, we went out for borrowing of, I forget how much money it was. Clearly, we have a financial person in Boston who advises us on these things. Met with them, as we always do, before we go out for an issuance of a bond. It was their opinion that because of, restraints that we have on revenues and monies that we've used in the past, that there was a very good likelihood that the bond rating was going to drop. They were concerned it might drop more than one spot. We had a conference call with Moody's. The bond rating was changed from A2 to A3, and at that time, again, the people that we hire, the people that we rely on, was not a surprising thing to them. It was not surprising to us based upon our conversations with them. And honestly, I wish I had, but I wish I hadn't. I wish I had said it at the time, but it was something that was expected. We fully expected. Jimmy, myself, again, the financial people. I wasn't trying to hold any information. I'm not trying to be secretive about anything. I guess I suffer from the illness that I only like to talk about good things for the city of Lowell, and unfortunately, that always isn't the case, and I regret that. But clearly, I'm very proud of the bond rating. You're absolutely right, Councilor. The bond rating is still very strong. In the notice that they sent, that we will get you a copy of, they talk about several things that we have instituted over the last 6 months, and it is still the highest bond rating in, I don't know how many years, 20 years for the city of Lowell. So clearly, we've kept our rating strong through very, very difficult times, through loss of revenue from state aid. We've kept our taxes low. We continue to have about a $10 million gap between the levy and the levy limit. We're still very, very strong as far as our bond rating goes. And that really sums it up. I'll be happy to get you the report that Moody sent. I apologize, didn't mean to be secretive. Really, it was expected. And I understand that we do this every day, and our expectations are probably different than other expectations, and that's sometimes difficult to separate. And I perfectly understand the frustration for not knowing. I apologize for that. But in our opinion, and I don't mean to shuffle this off as nothing, clearly it's something, but it was not something that was unexpected. It was not something that we were terribly disappointed with at the time, even though clearly it was a downgrade. So we'll be happy to get you the report from Moody's, and apologize. I didn't mean to offend anybody.
I appreciate that, and I was taken aback, Mr. Manager, a little bit, because, and I know we all follow the finances, and I follow them closely, and when the rating does go down, that's the bond council, a bonding company, is telling us that we're becoming a greater risk. That translates into higher cost to borrow, which clearly has an impact on our budget and ultimately the tax rate. So, but I would also like to see, and maybe you're right, maybe you do it every day, you expected it. Quite frankly, I didn't expect it. I think that we're pretty financially strong. I know that our reserves are dwindling, and I think that they're dwindling to a dangerously low level. But that's the decisions that have been made. I would like to see the report to know what we need to do to go back to where we were and, to increase that rating, and that's what the report will tell us. And if that means we got to increase our reserves, if we have to limit our spending, if we have to look at our levy limit, all of these things, I think that's important for this council to know. I understand you're the manager, but ultimately we do make the decisions, and as a collective body, and I thought it was important to get your response on it. Can you tell me what our current rating is? What is the actual rating? What was the
Actual rating is A3.
A3?
Mhm.
Well, like you said, according to, that's still good investment grade rating, according to the scale, so, and it went down from what, Mr. Manager?
A2.
A2, okay. I know Moody's has one rating and Standard & Poor has a different rating, so that's good to know. Well, thank you. You've answered my questions, Mr. Manager. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. Let me, this was in March of this year, is that it was?
Middle of March, Council.
Okay. Well, I won't belabor the point, but I didn't know it was expected that it was going down. And no one's saying any individual has control over where the rate is going, but the reason, and when we were upgraded, we talked about it, and I understand the idea of wanting to talk about good things. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we're making decisions like bonding the garage, it's important for us to know. So I guess my question is, this was before we voted on the garage, and I remember in the discussion around the garage, this $4.5 million that we haven't decided how we're funding it, not that it's costing $4.5 million to build the garage, but the $4.5 million increase that we've yet to identify how we're funding it. There was an indication during the discussion that bond counsel then, and that was in April or May, said this may cause a decrease in your bond rating. In other words, this may adversely affect your bond rating.
I don't remember that, Council.
Well, I remember asking the solicitor that question because we were in contact with bond counsel. So I guess, have we gone out, have the bonds on the garage have we gone out to sell those? Have we formulated those yet?
No, the issue that happened in March had nothing to do with the garage. It was prior to the garage. So the bond rating only. The way a bond rating works is you go out to borrow money, and in this case,
give you a rate.
Moody's gives you a rate after the bonds are issued, not prior to. And then you deal with that as you go forward. Any borrowing that's happened since March has been short-term borrowing. So we have not gone back out for another.
So what about for the garage?
Issuance.
We haven't done anything on that yet. All right.
No, right, Jimmy?
What would on the amount that we anticipate to be borrowing on the garage? All right, which is what's the total amount that you anticipate you'll have to borrow?
20?
22 million?
22.
All right.
20, 21?
Well, 28 is the total cost. We're
I thought it was
bonding
25.
the whole thing.
28, I thought it was 25. I forget.
24 is, well, I guess my question is, let's assume we don't get downgraded again. How much more is it going to cost us between the A3 and the A2? Assuming that remains the rate.
We'll have to do that. I don't have those numbers. We could do that, sure.
Those are the facts that I think are important to the council in making those decisions. I understand no one has a crystal ball. You don't know what the rate is going to be, but I think it's important to know where we stand, or have we recently been downgraded, or is that just temporary? Do we think we're going to go back up? I think having $4.5 million not accounted for in terms of how we're going to pay for it could adversely affect us again. And next stop is junk bond rating. And so, once we drop below where we are, that could cost us a huge amount of money. And so I think those are facts that the council has to have at the ready in order to make what are important 20-year-long decisions that are going to impact the city. So I would ask, in addition to the Moody's report, if we can get an analysis in terms of, you know, the difference between A2, A3, and whatever the next, whether it's Moody's is who you use, right, instead of Standard & Poor's. If we can find out what the break point is for the bonds, what the interest, increased interest cost could be, I think it's critically important, not just because if we're borrowing, but we got to know how we're going to pay it. We got to know what we're dealing with every day. Even tonight, entering into a contract for lease spaces, we have to know how we're going to pay for not just the unfunded part so far, but if it's going to cost us more in interest. I don't know how we can intelligently make these decisions without having all the facts. So if we can get that information, I would appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilor Armin Mercier.
I just have a question. On this report that indicates that our bond went down, would that spell out why it went down? Would
Well,
they,
in their, yes, what they...
in their opinion, they will say because of this, and this?
The major was spending down of reserves, basically.
Can we add to this report on what we spent our reserves down for?
Sure.
That brought this about? Because there isn't any actions that take place that doesn't also include us. So if this bond rating went down and it's because we spent our reserves, I'd be kind of interested in knowing what we spent the reserves for.
Sure. I think the biggest one over the last 3 years was the great reduction in local aid, 2 years in a row. Then obviously the end of last year, the money that was added to the budget. But we can get your report, Joe.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, as Councilor Armin Mercier just mentioned, I think the report can be a great tool for planning forward as to what we want to do in terms of, building up the reserves and/or decreasing or dealing with our fixed costs in some fashion. So I think it can be, we can use that to move forward. But I also had a question from the auditor. Mr. Auditor, were you aware of the bond rating reduction?
Not at the present time.
You didn't know about it either?
No, I didn't know about it, but I was in the meeting with them, but they didn't say anything about the bond rating drop at that time.
When did you learn of it?
It was probably May. Recently, I believe.
Okay. And you didn't think it was worth letting us know either? I'm concerned that your job is just basically the financial watchdog for us, and you knew about it but didn't tell us.
The bond rating, the bond process, I have nothing to do with it. I just give them the figures, and they process all the figures. That's all it is, and they don't, curtail me into the bond process. It's usually done with the treasurer and the manager's office.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was concerned about the bond rating as well, and I asked for and received a report that goes back 20 years. 1986, the bond rating for this city was Baa1. It remained that up until 1999. When Manager Cox was hired, the bond rating was sharply increased to A3, and for 3 consecutive years, the year 2002, 2003, 2004, the bond rating was A2, the highest in the history of this city. 2006, it's down to A3. So in 1986, the bond rating was Baa1. A sharp increase and a positive increase in our bond rating over the last 6 years.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Next motion is by Councilor Elliott. City Council requests the city manager report on the status of the group home at 96 Mount Hope Street. Second by Councilor Armin Mercier. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion speaks for itself, but we received a complaint from a resident in that part of the Pawtuckaville section of the city concerning activity at, I believe it's a group home for women. I'd just like to know how these homes get in the neighborhood. I wasn't aware of it. It seems like, it's another organization run by a company out of Arlington, I believe, that, they come in under whatever part of the law, and they buy a home, and they don't have to go for any zoning, any variance or anything of that nature, and it just seems that they, until a complaint comes, it's after the fact. So I think it'd be important if we could find out, is there also any inventory, if you will, how many group homes there are and
We can try to get you that.
in the city?
There's quite a few, I know that. We'll get your report, Counselor. I'm not aware of this one either.
Okay, they must have to come for a permit somewhere, don't they? And is there any way for us to, or maybe this through you, Mayor, to the solicitor, what is the process for these group homes to come into the city before it's after the fact? I mean, I know Pawtuckaville sure has its share of groups home, and it seems like this is another one. How do we find out? How do people know? How do residents know outside of, some activity taking place before it's after the fact?
Madam Solicitor, I don't know if you have a...
I mean, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but, I'd like to know from my own personal knowledge,
I'm sorry,
outside of
could you
receiving a
just
complaint of some things taking place at a particular address, is there any notification or anything that'll tell the city?
I don't think anything is required. I remember years ago dealing with it in another life, group homes, and they have a special status as far as zoning goes, as far as notification goes. You would think that to be a good neighbor, they would tell people before they went in rather than do it the way they end up doing it, which causes a lot of problems. But my recollection, and unless things have changed, I don't think they have, is that cities have very, very little control over this. And once they come in, they're granted a special status for some reason. And I know the argument that we've made many times is that we have many, many group homes, and the city certainly does its share on these types of things. This one, I don't know particularly what the particulars are, but certainly we'll get you a report on this one in particular, what we can find out. And we had one downtown recently that tried to go in not too long ago. Not a group home, but a facility that would not have been good for the city. I think that was a little different in that it had some restrictions. It was near a school. It was near a public park. Those types of things. But we'll certainly try to get you a report on this, and also get you a report on how many we have in the city. I know there are a lot in Pawtuckaville.
Right. No, thank you, Mr. Manager. I appreciate that, and I think this is a terrible law. I think it does a disservice to every community in this Commonwealth where there are rules and regulations and laws put into place, and this should not be exempt. Doesn't mean that communities will turn them away. We just want to know when they're coming and how many we have, and I'm beating a dead horse here. I'll look forward to the report, and I appreciate it. It's just very frustrating.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Armin Mercier.
Just very quickly, it could be easily found out how many there are because they're all tax exempt, and I'm sure the assessors has that information. But having a group home that doesn't require building permits, zoning various, still there are rules that they must adhere to, and those rules are enforced by the building department. For instance, there's just got to be so many people per square foot in those rooms, in those houses. Parking is a requirement. So I'm anxious to hear from this report, from this place, and then we could follow up with the building department to make sure that they're adhering to the rules that come under these group homes. Because I know that there's supposed to be only so many people in a certain group home. And I don't know if that's being policed by us because we don't even know where they are. And I mean the administration. So I think that we can find out how many there are, but I think maybe the building department should start maybe paying more attention, even though there hasn't been any complaints, particularly now that there is a complaint, to make sure that that group home is satisfying the law as it relates to the occupancy of that place, because there are rules and regulations that they must follow in terms of how many people, what the density is, that kind of stuff.
Thank you. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. Just briefly, we have dealt with this issue in the past, and it is, as the manager says, the state law. It's kind of anti, not in my backyard kind of thing, so that they are exempt from zoning and in large part the local rules, but they are regulated typically by a state agency, be it the Department of Mental Health, the Department of Mental Retardation, and so forth. And so they certainly have laws and rules and regulations they have to abide by from their licensing agency. And for this particular complaint, it would seem to me that, you know, a report, as well as a report from the appropriate licensing agency, should be obtained, because if they're either understaffed or they're letting residents roam around to, you know, their own detriment or their own, you know, danger, then they should be reported to the appropriate state agency. Even if we can't regulate some of their activities, certainly the state can. So I think that should be part of the report too. What, you know, have we determined which is their licensing agency, and has a complaint properly been lodged by the city?
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Next motion is by Councilor Rita Mercier. City Council requests the city manager have the proper department change the time on the meter at 127 Merrimack Street from 2 hours to 1/2 hour. Second by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There were actually two meters, two businesses, 127, 129. And it speaks for itself in that the meters are 2 hours. They want to go to a half an hour, because both of these established businesses said that their customers don't stay there for 2 hours, and the turnover is greater than 2 hours, so they'd like to cut it down to just a half an hour each. I think it's meter 138, 137, right downtown in front of those addresses. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? That motion is approved. Next motion is by Councilor Caulfield. City Council requests the city manager have the law department draw the proper vote to name the corner of Stevens Street and D Street for Robert Lemire. Seconded by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It is an honor for me to bring this motion forward this evening. Robert Red Lemire, United States Army, very religious person, very humble, caring, a devout parishioner of St. Margaret's Church. Robert Lemire was seriously wounded in the Second World War, seriously wounded in his legs. Never, ever complained, never once said, why me? Why did this have to happen to me? He entered the United States Army May 13, 1943, at Fort Devens, Massachusetts. Served in the European Campaign Theater with service in Naples, Foggia, Rome, Arno, southern France, and the Rhineland. He was assigned as a crewman and an infantryman to a tank division. The awards this man received is the Presidential Unit Citation, the European African Middle Eastern Theater Campaign Ribbon, the World War II Victory Medal, the Purple Heart, Combat Infantryman's Badge is also waiting the Bronze Star to be awarded. Red Lemire was the perfect man, perfect human being. Very gracious and humble, caring, and a devout Christian. Practices faith immensely. Wonderful family, and he would be the last person looking for any recognition. But his family suggested that if we named this corner after their father, they'd be extremely honored, Mr. Mayor. I bring this motion forward and request this motion to be passed. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? That motion is approved. Final motion is mine. Any objection for me reading it from here? The City Council requests the city manager have the Division of Planning and Development develop zoning provisions for in-law apartments, seconded by Councilor Armin Mercier. Very briefly, I know the DPD staff is working on this. I think the initial requests came out of consultations with the Pawtuckettville Citizens Council, who've asked for a provision like this to be included in the next set of revisions to the zoning code. I'm starting to get requests from folks in other parts of the city as well. So the intent is just to have the DPD staff move along this as quickly as possible. Any questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Armen-Mercier.
No, it's too early.
Too early?
Motion to adjourn.
Councilor Armen-Mercier, second by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The meeting stands adjourned.
Go and eat, Rita.